Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It's our Monday, June 12th, 2023 meeting. If you'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point in time, I'd like to introduce the members of the commission that are here this evening. To my immediate right is Commission Member James Fitzsimmons, and next to Jim is Commission Member Jeff Cohan. To my immediate left is Steve Allenson, who's the Secretary of the Commission, and next to Steve is Dave Parent, who's an alternate on the Commission. And at the lower table is Cheryl Ann Tubby, who's our recording secretary. Next to Cheryl Ann is Kevin Pagini, who's our town planner, and I'm Jim Seichter, the commission chairperson. Our first order of business is consideration and approval of the minutes of our May 2023 meeting. I have a motion to approve the minutes, or does anyone like to make any corrections, additions to the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept the May 8th, 2023 minutes as submitted.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, before we get to our first order of business, just a couple, just one quick announcement. As far as on our agenda, there's one item that's not going to be heard this evening, which is new business number 6. It's a site plan for renovation of existing dining hall at Choate Rosemary Hall, 138 North Elm Street. Again, that's not going to be heard this evening. Which brings us to our first order of business, which is a public hearing. It's a special permit, used car dealership to financial institution, manufacturers and traders trust. That the applicant would please come forward to begin preparing for his or her presentation. And Mr. Allenson, if you'd please note all correspondence for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Also, if you'd read the legal notice, too, if you would, please.
Will do. Legal notice number 407-23, special permit request for Manufacturers and Trader Trust Company to reduce existing nonconformities and construct a financial institution and associated parking at 809 North Colony Road, RF-40, Route 5 zone. We have the special permit application and plans. We have an inspection report from the Wallingford Fire Department. Inspection date 5/11/23. A memorandum from the Department of Engineering dated May 31st, 2023. An interoffice memorandum from Scott Shipman, Senior Engineer, to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated May 31st, 2023. Correspondence from Robert Esposito, dated June 6th, 2023. Correspondence from Giuliano Associates to Alison Kapuscinski, Town Engineer, dated June 8th, 2023. Memorandum from the Department of Engineering to the Planning and Zoning Commission, dated June 9th, 2023. And a property boundary survey marked revised, date of receipt June 8th, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. If the applicant would please introduce themselves, and begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva. I'm an attorney with the Senaviva Law Firm in Meriden. To my left is Doug Scheid, who's the architect on this particular project. And to his left is Chris Giuliano, who will be making the majority of the technical presentation to the Commission tonight. Also in the audience is Mike Hyman, a bank representative. You know from the application that we're requesting the right to raise the existing building that is located at 809 North Colony and to construct in this RF-40 zone a new 3,600 square foot M&T bank building. It It would have 23 parking spaces and a double drive-through on the south side of the building. The plan, as Chris will be pointing out, is designed to remove one of the two existing curb cuts. So there'll be one remaining curb cut, which is compliant with your regulation in that zone, and that would be lined up with the traffic light that is already existing. There were other proposed changes that would reduce the existing nonconformities. The building that is there does not comply with certain requirements such as front landscaping, rear yard setback, and all the other non-compliances will be remedied. So this non-conforming building is compliant with your non-conforming building section of the zoning regulations as we reduce the nonconformities as part of this. Chris is going to go through the technical part of the proposal. Mr. Chairman, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris to go up to the easel.
Good evening. For the record, as Dennis said, my name is Christopher Giuliano. I'm a licensed land surveyor and professional engineer with the firm Giuliano Associates. I maintain an office at 405 Main Street in the Aylesville section of town.
Excuse me, Mr. Giuliano, if you could stand on the other side so perhaps some of the people in the audience could have a better view.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to start off with the existing survey. I'm going to run through the plan, orient everyone, and then I'll move into the actual design. So right now we have the existing property. Route 5 is here at the south side, or the bottom of the page. Off to the west, we have a single-family residence to the north on the right, and we have the access way to Back 9 Social. I still call it the old name of the old company that was there. It's escaping me right now. But the existing building is L-shaped. It is basically right up against the southern property line. Most of the site is paved. It is a used car dealership, so obviously that is what is intended for best use for that use. We have about 6% open space, landscaping, and as you notice on my drawing, most of that is unconnected, minimal, and it is more decorative stone than grass. So the idea is to raise that building and construct a new bank or financial institution for M&T. So as Dennis indicated, we are going to be closing out, we're going to be closing out the southern curb cut. So we're just going to have the one curb cut across from Walmart. So we're going to be using access from the light. One way in, two ways out. Our parking lot on the north side, and we've positioned the building down to the south to basically make best use of the property. I know we're in the Route 5 zone, which normally means 50 feet of front landscaping, setbacks, and everything else. But in this case, the property is only 125 foot deep. So if you look at the actual building setback, we'd be able to get a food truck on here and comply with all the setbacks. Obviously, that doesn't work for the proposed application of the bank. So what we've done is we've pushed the building as far back to the west. So we have a 5-foot landscape strip, 12 feet for our drive-through, our building, which is roughly 52 feet wide, and then the drive-through on the east side. That allows us to have about 31 feet of landscaping, which is much better than what we have currently. And overall, we actually are able to increase the open space to approximately 40%. So it's a major increase, a major plus with respect to nonconformities. Now, we did have one minor change in between submission and tonight. From the fire marshal, there was a question about getting his vehicles on and around the site. So in order to address those comments, we removed trees, light poles, and signage from these two islands, and we're also going to bring those two islands down to grade. They're either going to be a flush curb or a mountable curb, so that if the fire, not if, but when a fire truck comes on the property, if needed, they could literally turn around and come back out. The second change we made for the fire marshal was we increased the southern bypass drive-through from 9 to 12 feet. This will give him enough room so he's not possibly coming into conflict with the overhang for the drive-through area. With respect to utilities, the property is going to be served by water, sewer, and underground electric. Stormwater, because we have such a reduction in impervious surface between existing and proposed conditions, technically we didn't have to do anything with respect to stormwater, but as you all know, I'm very conservative in my approaches. So what we did is we did put in a small stormwater system on the north side. So we're going to be taking in stormwater through our catch basin system, passing it through a vortex to basically clean the water so we meet water quality, put it into a Coltex system, which is an underground plastic galley, infiltrate with an overflow going back into the state system as needed. Town engineer has asked for an infiltration test. As Commission knows, I've been in the area for more than 30 years, practicing in my entire life. We did the site to the north, the Toyota dealership. We did the Subaru dealership to the south. So we do have infiltration rates, but town engineer wanted a site-specific one. We will be getting that with borings that are going to be done on the 19th. That will not affect the size of the stormwater system. It'll just matter how much water, how quickly it infiltrates into the ground. Another couple comments on erosion control. We do have an entire system here. Town engineer did point out a couple of minor changes that were requested, and we've made those changes, and you have that updated drawing in your packet. And the last thing happens to be the photometrics. As you know, we have to have zero light trespass from this property onto adjacent properties. With the changing or moving of light fixtures out of these two islands, we had to be a little bit creative in moving our light poles. So we do have light poles throughout the center of the property, one in the two islands adjacent to the building. And then what's actually very interesting about the site is we actually have a bunch of light bollards that light up the walkway from the building down to the sidewalk along the front of the property. So with that, if there's any specific questions that I can answer for you, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, just a quick question. You mentioned the comments that the fire marshal, subsequent comments the fire marshal gave you. Is that included on the plans that we have here?
The 4 sheets that were delivered on June 8th, and I believe went out in your packet.
That's the ones that are stamped June 8th. That
those are
indicates
the
that.
revised plans,
Okay.
yes.
So we have all of the revisions that you were just
Yes, you
talking
do.
about on these plans. Okay, good, thank you. Commission members with any questions for Mr. Giuliano? Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a really quick comment. I think the plan is pretty good. Mr. Giuliano has a pretty good track record along Route 5. I'm okay with the 31-foot setback where we require 50 feet. I guess my question is, it doesn't look like, it looks like there could be more landscaping in that front area. And I'm wondering if, you do have pictured, some landscaping, but there's a big corner over there that, might be, available to landscape that a little more.
Okay.
And that's really my only comment.
In addressing that, obviously the regulations state we have to have our street trees, which every 50 feet, which we've done and adjusted for the opening. The architect and M&T, they have this little landscape area with their monument sign and their flagpoles and 2 other areas. Again, we also have some shade, arborvitae that are planted along there, along the south side, basically to buffer our site from the parking to the south. We can add some more shrubs and bushes in if that would go a big way with the commission. I don't see that being a problem. There is nothing specific in the regulations that I'm aware of that requires landscaping beyond street trees and interior islands and stuff like that. But I'd be happy to make that change and add a little more for you. That's not a problem.
Thank you. It's just me asking.
I understand.
Because we're giving you something.
That's not a problem, and thank you for the compliment, and we'll make that happen for you.
Other commission members? Mr. Fitzsimmons?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would support Commissioner Cohen's request for some additional ground cover, certainly in light of the fire chief making you take the trees out of the island. So anything you could do there would be good. The plan is an improvement over the current and former use from a used car dealership, and I think the open space growth is significant. Two questions from your presentation. So this is a unique area of Route 5 because you have a signalized entrance which is used for entering and exiting. To your north is a residential use, and the north of that is Dunkin' Donuts and then Toyota. Because it's in the Route 5 area and Dunkin' Donuts has one, I don't see a sidewalk along the whole frontage. And ultimately, if and when that residential use goes commercial, it should be able to connect to the sidewalk in front of Dunkin' Donuts and the sidewalk in front of here. And I guess I do see a little sidewalk where it appears to me where someone could cross in front of the drive-through. But am I missing the side? Is there a sidewalk along the whole frontage?
There is, sir. Basically, if you come look at the drawing where the sanitary sewer line is, it's off the road. The sidewalk is basically going to straddle that sanitary sewer. So we start at our property line in the north, and we run all the way down to back 9 Socials driveway in the south.
It is. So it is here.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Check. Secondly, and also talking about the property to the north, which is not your property, it's not why we're here, but in the Route 5 regulations, we require, where appropriate, an easement for an interconnection. And again, assuming this is the planning function, assuming that property to the north someday will turn and convert from residential, and because you have the light, can you add in your plans an area to show a potential future interconnection?
We can, and we will.
Okay, you will. Okay, thank you.
You didn't let me down. Other commission members with any questions? Is that the extent of your presentation, sir?
Again, we have the architect here. We've submitted the plans, some of the elevations as part of our submission. If the commission has any particular questions, I know that Doug is here to answer them, and he's had some experience serving on a commission, so he's happy to answer anything you might have.
Perhaps you could just give us a brief view of the architecture.
Sure. I did submit the drawings. It's a brick building with clapboard on the upper portion, very residential-looking building.
I take it you don't have any pictures to share with the pub other than that?
I have this. I can show it, but it's pretty small.
Yeah, maybe you can stand. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding you. It was a joke.
So it's a one-story brick building with a very residential roof line. The bank intends to look at alternative energies for the solar panels. Landscaping is quite full.
Sir, if you could please use the microphone. They're unable to pick you up.
I apologize. Is that better?
Absolutely. Thank
I
you.
apologize. So it's an all-brick building around the whole side. There is a clapboard on the eaves and a shingled roof all the way around.
Good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Pagini, before I go out to the public, any comments that you'd like to make on the application?
I think I had mentioned to the applicant regarding the, at least trying to meet the building orientation requirement. So I know that wasn't mentioned, but, and I think Mr. Fitzsimmons stole my comments about the internal traffic connection. But other than that, I think it's an improvement on what currently exists, especially with the removal of the driveway.
Thank you. Well, he stole my comments also, so we'll go out to the public. This is a public hearing. Any members of the public like to comment on the application, please come forward and name and address. Anyone like to comment? Seeing none, I'd bring it back to the applicant if you'd like to make any final comments.
Again, I think, Mr. Chairman, it's a pretty straightforward application. I think it's a far better improvement than what is there currently, and I think it'll be actually safer with the one curb cut.
Thank you. Commission members, any final comments before I close the public hearing? Mr. Fitzsimmons.
I was confused by the town planner's comments. So building orientation, it will not be facing 5? The side of the building will face 5? I didn't happen to see the PowerPoint.
That's correct, yeah. So the existing building is non-conforming.
Oh,
Correct.
I know, yeah.
So we were able to reduce or eliminate the majority of nonconformities. The problem it would just be a faux door for purposes of security and things of that sort. We don't want it to be confusing. The parking is to the north, the access is to the north.
So probably more similar to Wells Fargo, further down.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, if there's no other comments from the applicant, no further comments from the commission, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for application 407-23.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. And I vote yes. At this point in time, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a special permit for 809 North Colony Road, application 407-23. Special permit and site plan approval request to reduce existing nonconformities on site and construct a financial institution with associated parking at 809 North Colony on plans entitled M&T Bank Proposed Branch, dated 5/3/2023 and revised to 6/12/2023, subject to the following conditions of approval. Number 1, comments from the Fire Marshal's Office dated 5/19/2023. 2, comments in interoffice memorandum from Senior Engineer Scott Shipman to the Planning and Zoning Department dated 5/31/2023. Number 3, comments from Allison Kapuscinski, Town Engineer, dated 5/31/2023 and 6/9/2023. An erosion and sediment control bond in the amount of $5,500. The internal connection to the adjacent property will be added to the final plans, as well as providing additional landscaping to the frontage area. And lastly, provide 6 copies of the approved final plans forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Office.
We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes, the application's been approved. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome. Brings us next to our item number 2 on the agenda. Again, it's a public hearing. It's a special permit, nursing home to multifamily residential, 55 LLC, 55 Kendracky Lane. And again, if the applicant would begin preparing for presentation. And Mr. Allison, if you please read the legal notice and note all correspondence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legal notice number 408-23, special permit request for 55 LLC for an adaptive reuse to convert a former 180-bed nursing home to a 71-unit multifamily residential building at 55 Kendracky Lane, R18 residential zone. We have the special permit application and site plans. We have an inspection report from the Wallingford Fire Department, inspection date 5/10/23. Correspondence from Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, to 55 LLC, dated May 22nd, 2023. A memorandum from Department of Engineering to Planning and Zoning Commission, dated May 31st, 2023. An interoffice memorandum from Scott Shipman, Senior Engineer, to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated May 31st, 2023. Email correspondence from Dennis Senaviva to Kevin Pagini, dated 6/5/2023. there's also some drawings attached to that last exhibit. An inter-department referral from our environmental planner, dated receipt May 8th, 2023, dated 6/7/2023. Correspondence from James Cassidy to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated June 7th, 2023. And a revised set of plans, date of receipt, June 7th, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. And if the applicant's representatives please introduce themselves and begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva. I'm an attorney with the Senaviva Law Firm in Meriden. I represent the owner and applicant. With me to my left is Matt Baldino, who is the traffic engineer. You have his memorandum as part of our submission. He's from Solly Engineering. Jim Cassidy is to his left. He'll be going up to the easel shortly, making the presentation. He is the project engineer. Amy Alessi is in the audience. She's an owner representative and will be participating to answer any questions that this commission might have about the operations as are proposed. So the property is a 11.58 acre site. It is currently developed with a 69,000 square foot building that was most recently occupied and operated as a 180 bed nursing home. The parcel is zoned R18. We're here pursuant to section 6.16 of your zoning regulations. It's referenced in the R18 zone, in that the applicant proposes to make an adaptive reuse to multifamily for this parcel. And again, that's 6.16. The proposal is to develop the existing building with an extension, as Jim will point out, on the 2 second-story wings, which will be symmetrical with the first story, with 71 market-rate residential units. There would be 53 one-bedroom and studio units, and there would be 18 two-bedroom units. This proposal, if any of you have done the math in 6.16 in terms of what number of dwelling units are permitted by your regulations, would have permitted a maximum of over 100 units. And of course, this development is asking for 71 based upon your regulations. And one of the main reasons, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission, for the reduction in the request, or the reason not requesting the maximum, which would not be unusual, frankly, is because they wanted to make sure that the units are larger. They wanted larger units in order to attract market rate tenants. That really is the thrust of the application. I know there may have been some expressed concerns, but it is market rate. And again, 71 units where over 100 would be otherwise permitted by your regulations. Now, there are 134 parking spaces. Jim will go through that on his presentation. That does comply with your zoning regulations, and as you probably know, you have different requirements for single bedroom and studio units versus two-bedroom additional parking. And again, we meet that requirement. So this adaptive reuse regulation, which is applicable to all of your residential zones, we're here again under 6.16. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to put Mr. Cassidy up to the easel, please.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jim Cassidy, professional engineer and principal with the firm of Howell C. Pearson & Cassidy. My office is located at 630 Main Street in Cromwell, Connecticut. Here tonight representing 55 LLC. As Attorney Senaviva had mentioned, we're here tonight seeking a special permit application or approval for the adaptive reuse of an existing structure at 55 Kondraki Lane. The first photo I have up here is an existing site photo. As mentioned, the property outlined in red on this site is the site we're talking about, consisting of 10.9 acres of R18 residentially zoned land. Up on the top or to the north, we have 260 feet of frontage along Kondraki. So it's bounded on the north by Kondraki Lane existing residence along Contrachy and a resident off on the east that's on Contrachy also. Down to the south is bounded by existing residents along Sawmill and Laurel Road. And then on the west, it is bounded by Bernadette Lane, and there's another little main road on the far west. There's some existing rear houses. So it's all surrounded by existing residents. The site itself, as mentioned, it does contain an existing two-story structure, basically shown as this white H on the property. The total footprint of the structure is 30,000 square feet. Attorney Senaviva had mentioned is 69. That's between all the floors. It's a total of 69,000 square feet. Access to the site comes in along the westerly boundary line. There's an existing site access driveway that would remain. That provides access to an existing parking lot. The circumference is on the south and the east side of the building, where there's presently a total of 78 parking spaces, then refuge and utility areas to the back portion. If you look at it, topography on the site is a moderate grade as it comes off Contrachy, ranging from about elevation 140 at the intersection, eventually sloping down to this water course that's running in a westerly direction through the center of the site where it's elevation 124. And then in the back around the building, it's a moderate grade until it gets very steep, getting to an elevation of about 140 along the southerly property line. You can see on this photo the majority of the site, over around half the site, is presently wooded and would remain the same as part of this development. As was mentioned, what we're proposing to do is an adaptive reuse of this building. We want to convert it to multifamily. The proposal is to convert that existing building, as Attorney Senaviva had mentioned, we would like to convert it to 171 multifamily units, although we're promoted over 100 multifamily units.
71.
So, 71, I'm sorry, 71. That would consist of 18 two-bedroom units, 38 one-bedroom, and total and 15 studio, so a total of 71 units. To achieve this, we are looking at adding an addition to the building. On the north end, you'll see these two areas, and on your site plans you have before you, those two areas that are highlighted in tan. That's an extension of the second floor. If you take a look at the existing building, it actually drops down one level towards the front. So it would be extending those two little wings of the building within the existing footprint. Total footprint area, or should say total building area, increases by about 9,500 square feet. In your zoning regulations, we are allowed under section 16.6, I believe it's D, of your zoning regulations for adaptive reuse. We're allowed to do an extension up to 50% max. This area, when you take a look at the gross floor area in comparison to what we're proposing for extension, only works out to about 14.5% increase. In addition to, because of the change of use, we need to add additional parking. Per your zoning regulations, for a one-bedroom and for a studio, you're required to have 1.75 spaces per unit, and for a two-bedroom, we're required to have 2.25 per unit. Based upon the unit count, we're required to have a total of 134 parking spaces. What we've done is we've reconfigured the parking lot to provide exactly 134 parking spaces. How are we achieving this? Basically, to the west or to the front of the building, there's an existing pull-off and turnaround area that will get eliminated. There's a landscape island that will become paid parking. The turnout drive gets removed and becomes a landscape area along the face of the building. There's some other smaller areas, extensions of each end of the existing parking lot along the south side that we'll be adding in a parking space. And mainly on the back or to the west side, presently there's parking on one side of the driveway, a drive aisle, and then there's a slope. We'll be adding additional parking in this area here, and then having to do some regrading of that slope to accommodate a total of 134 parking spaces. We'll also be going back, and where there is presently no end islands in the parking lot, we're going to be removing the existing pavement and adding end islands with landscape trees. You'll find that there's a total of 6 landscape trees within the parking lot. They're going to be incorporated into this final plan. Just flip over. So as part of our submission, we did submit a landscaping plan. So what happens is we're introducing a center island here, end island here, another end island here, and then one down at this end, and then one in this corner. So any place shaded is where we're going to be removing pavement and adding new landscape islands. The darker gray areas are the areas of new pavement. In doing this design, with the removal of pavement and then the adding of the new pavement for the parking lot extension, we're looking at a slight increase of impervious coverage of about 3,300 square feet, which only works out to about 3% of the overall impervious coverage on the site. I know you received some comments from engineering, which was planning, which those comments have already been addressed and resubmitted on the plans. We did meet with staff last week. We did receive the comments from engineering. We reviewed them and willing to incorporate them as conditions of approval. But one I'll point out is because of the slight increase in impervious coverage, there was a request that we do some kind of a mitigation for this increase. In talking to Allison, the town engineer, the thought was rather than trying to do some type of on-site detention to reduce runoff, this is not a good area to do it, in that we're pretty far down on a water course, and usually introducing detention on a water course when you're, say, 45 minutes down on the watershed, it will have a conflict. So in this particular case, what we propose to do, and talk to your town engineer about it, is to implement some stormwater quality measures. Those measures would be a matter of installing a special type of unit to treat stormwater within the catch basin and the existing catch basins, improve stormwater quality as it runs off this site. The building itself, as I mentioned, we're looking at the second floor addition. In your package, you have a illustrated building plan. So what will happen is the first sheet here would be the front of the building as you face Kendraki. This is a lower basement or ground walkout level that can be converted to residential units. The middle H is the existing footprint for the first floor, which once again will be converted to the residential units. The last H, or to the far right, is going to be the second floor plan. As mentioned, the building only comes up to this line here right now. We're going to be extending it out in these two boxed areas for a total of 9,500 square feet. And that would make up basically the same plate as the first floor, allowing us to get a total of 171 units in this. I'm sorry, 71 units. We have some renderings. These were submitted as part of the package you got before you. We're going to be going through and putting a whole new face on the building. It is an existing brick structure. As I mentioned, this is the part that faces Kendraki. Presently, the roof line is here and then cuts out, so there's about the 9,000 square foot addition that goes on the second floor. Then it steps up as you come to the back to the two-story structure. So what we're going to do is continue that roof line all the way through, and then again give it a new facelift, new materials, freshen up the brick, give it a nice new appearance. So with that, that's going to conclude my portion of the presentation. We got Matt Baldini here. He did the traffic engineering, and he's going to go over his portion.
I just wanted, Mr. Chairman, if I might go through one more thing, Jim, if you could. There was, on the landscaping plan, I just wanted you to point out some of the new trees along the side of the residential neighbors to the left side of your plan. I could see them from here.
So directly opposite the building, there is an existing tree line up against the fence line. The vegetation consists of deciduous trees, so during the winter months and fall, it is a bit thin. So we are proposing to do a hedgerow of junipers, upright junipers, along that entire row at a staggered 10 feet on center to supplement the screening in this particular area here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to the gentleman with the traffic, any commission members have any questions for this gentleman? You're on.
All right. This is on?
Yeah.
Yep. So good evening. For the record, my name is Matt Baldino. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Solely Engineering, office located at 501 Main Street in Monroe, Connecticut. We did prepare a trip generation assessment for the proposed development, which includes 71 residential units. In place of the previously approved 180-bed nursing home. As traffic engineers, we have many tools in our belt, one of which is the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Handbook. The Trip Generation Handbook collects data from other studies at other uses similar to establish rates for traffic generation for this use. As such, we prepared an estimate for the previous use, which demonstrated that during the weekday AM and weekday PM peak hours, the previous development generated 25 trips. A trip being either a vehicle entering or a vehicle exiting a site. Enter and exit would be 2 trips. The proposed development with the 71 dwelling units would generate 28 trips during the weekday AM and 36 trips during the weekday PM peak period. So overall, that is an increase in 3 trips from the previously approved development during the weekday AM and 11 trips during the weekday PM peak period. Typically, the trip generation, and widely accepted in the traffic engineering industry, is the threshold for a traffic impact assessment would be 50 new left-turning vehicles or 100 new trips at an intersection. As you can see here tonight, the proposed development is not expected to generate that threshold and trigger that threshold at the intersection of the site driveway. As mentioned, we do propose to maintain the existing access to the site via the stop-controlled intersection at the 4-way intersection with Sylvan Lane and Kondraki Lane. We have spoken with the town engineer, who has reviewed the traffic trip generation memorandum prior to tonight, and has indicated she did provide some minor comments that we can address as conditions of approval, which include painting a stop bar at the stop sign exiting the site, as well as ensuring that we maintain adequate site distance and sight lines exiting the site with any modifications that may occur at the signage to the site. With that, I'm happy to answer any traffic-related questions for the proposed redevelopment.
Commission members, any questions on the traffic? Mr. Pagini, any comments?
I have no further comments at this point. We did work with the applicant quite a bit. If the commission does have anything that they are interested in, please let me know.
Sure. Gentlemen?
You know, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure whether it's germane at this point. I did want to point out that there were some discussions, they came up late in the discussions with the town about a temporary remediation effort that was made by the previous owner in 2018 to the culvert that is underneath the existing driveway. And so there's a record, you know, in the Wetlands Watercourse Commission archives that talks about the fact that there was, I think Mr. Parent ran the meeting, Attorney Parent, that there was some concerns because it was an emergency situation. That particular repair, again back in 2018, June of 2018, was undertaken, as the records show, without a plan being reviewed by the then town engineer or the environmental planner. Work was done, and since that time there's been some concerns that the town engineer, your current town engineer, indicates exists in that area relative to whether or not the repairs have created a problem rather than remediating a problem. And so while that is if you will, a 5-year-old issue that somehow didn't get resolved in the past 5 years, I know that there has been discussion with the town planner, the town engineer, the town attorney, the environmental planner about coming up with some obligation being placed on the new owner should this P&Z approve the application, in which there would be sort of a remedy, a permanent remedying those temporary repairs that now are 5 years temporary, and going back, if you will, to replacing the damaged culvert with the culverts that existed prior to the damage that were installed back in 1973. So You may see that in the comments that you've gotten from your staff, I suspect, and that is an effort to take what is arguably an existing problem of 5 years in length from, again, remediation that was done, I think, probably well-intentioned, but without the necessary plans being reviewed. And again, it was an emergency situation. You had an active convalescent facility, 180 residents. I'm sure, you know, the driveway was compromised, so all of that was done. But 5 years moving forward, the applicant is prepared to permanently replace those culverts as one of the options that have been given to it as part of our submission today. So I wanted to point that out, that there is an existing issue that's been in existence unbeknownst to my client for 5 years. It's been thrust upon the current applicant, and they're prepared to address that issue directly.
Good, thank you. I mean, I would suspect that if there is an issue with the property, whether or not you folks were initially responsible for it, if this application is going to be approved, it's on you to take care of that, to make sure that everything is done as the way it should be. Would you like to add any comments to that, the situation, Mr. Piccini?
No, that was pretty concise. I can go over the condition of approval if you would like to before we read it, if that's confusing. But they basically have the option to either submit a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis of
Just a
culvert.
little slower, please.
So basically they have the options, they have two options, to either submit a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis of the culvert to confirm the existing culvert is adequately sized according to our stormwater management section of the zoning regulations and the state of Connecticut DOT drainage manual. That would be reviewed by the town, or the applicant shall permanently replace the temporarily repaired twin culvert as originally designed and installed, basically back to twin 60-inch culverts and proper outlet protection. But they also must submit an existing conditions study to our department of the existing culvert within 6 weeks after approval.
Thank you. Commission members, I take it that's the extent of your presentation, is that correct?
It is, Mr. Chairman. I think we're happy to answer any questions that you or the public might have.
Commission members, questions? Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just want to stick on this culvert issue just for a bit, since, you know, it came up. You know, through you, Mr. Chairman, you know, to town planner, I mean, is there an existing problem that this is causing right now? I mean, you know, does the drainage not get through there, or, you know, are these items just, you know, something that, going back to Attorney Senaviva's comments 5 years ago, this was not installed correctly. You know, I gotta assume, you know, somebody looked at it, and you know, it either works or it didn't work. Is it causing an existing problem right now?
It may be, so there are concerns upstream as well as downstream. So just to be 100% certain, we would like them to either replace what was, the pipes that were put in are substantially smaller than what was originally there. I'd say roughly 36 inches there now, and there was 60 inches there prior. So that's quite a bit. So the town engineer had concerns. The environmental planner and myself went out and inspected it. We saw some erosion issues and some other potential issues. So there were some concerns because it was never reviewed by the town engineer under that corrective order.
Okay, perfect. And then just one last question on, you know, the recommended motion you just stated. What did you want 6 weeks after?
It's basically, from what the town engineer described, it's an existing conditions study of the culvert just to make sure that it's structurally sound and whatnot, just to see what's actually going on with the culvert currently.
I think it'll also give you a base, you know, a base
Correct.
mark as to where we are today. How do you know what the changes are? You need the base, and That never was provided. You never received the plan.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Other commission members, Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Continuing on the culvert, so is the culvert the issue that came up on Friday that maybe we wouldn't have heard it this evening?
Yes.
Okay. And so the potential resolution is, with the motion, is if we grant approval, they have 6 weeks to produce a study.
Well, it's 6 weeks to produce just the baseline existing conditions study. It's not as technical as a hydrologic or hydraulic analysis, but it's just an initial study just to get an idea of what's going on there. Just the town engineer would like that, so that's how she phrased it. So that's what she would like to see.
So for the record, Jim Cassidy again, can I expand on that a little bit? So I did talk to your town engineer today because I was a little confused on what. Better? Much better. Again, for the record, Jim Cassidy. So I did talk to your town engineer today because I was a little confused on the comment also. And what she's asked is that within 6 weeks we go out and do an inspection on the culverts to see what kind of condition they are, if there's any issues like in the past where they're in imminent danger of failing, or what repairs they made previously and were they done appropriately. Just to back up a little bit so you can understand what actually happened down here. As Attorney Senaviva had mentioned, those culverts were put in as 2 5-foot diameter culverts back in 1973. They're CMP, corrugated metal culverts. Through time, the corrugated metal rots, decays. They had back in 2018, a partial collapse of the culvert. And my understanding that there's a partial collapse of the driveway, restricting access into the site. The recommendation at that point, when they went before the Wetlands Commission with a ceased and correct order, was to install what we call a liner into the culvert. Because they're existing 5-foot diameter culverts, you're not getting a 5-foot diameter pipe sleeve in there. And one of the culverts, the northerly culvert, they were able to get a 50-foot outside or 50-inch outside diameter sleeve, in which they basically put a flowable fill grout around the void to plug it up. So that one's pretty close to the original size. The other one, where it had the bigger collapse, they were only able to get a sleeve that was about 36 inches in diameter, and they filled the rest with flowable fill. So that reduction in the size of culvert may be causing some issues of backup upstream. That's something we have to take a look at, and as part of either doing a hydrology study or ultimately replace them with 2 new 5-foot diameter culverts to put it back to what it originally was.
If I could, through you, Mr. Chairman, so the backup upstream, you said it would not be happening in your property, correct?
It happens on our property. And
Only on your property?
it could affect other properties. I can't tell you until we do a hydrology study. So hydrology study is going to tell me the volume of fill, the volume and rate of flow down to that area. The hydraulic study will tell me what those culverts can pass and what the backup would be.
Okay. I guess, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I've sat up here a few years. I don't recall a culvert issue like this in my recent memory. It makes me uncomfortable, the condition that you have 6 weeks pending approval to do a study. I would have hoped, because I looked at the application and it says that the applicant already owns the property, so it hasn't been addressed or fixed. I realized I was out there yesterday and the driveway was blocked off, but I drove halfway down, and then, as I said, not knowing if we'd hear it. So I guess I would share, at this point, I'm concerned about this. I appreciate your explanation, and because looking at the timeline and the history, it sounds like the repair wasn't done appropriately.
No,
if I might,
Sorry.
I understand that wasn't the applicant's responsibility because it was a prior owner, but obviously we wouldn't want a failure because the failure would impact other properties either upstream or downstream, and that's not the intention. But much like Mr. Giuliano talked about the lights at the bank and making sure there's no light trespass, well, I feel the same way about water. It shouldn't impact any any other abutting property.
And just for the, to go over the timelines, just so we're clear, the 6 weeks is to do a inspection of the culverts, not to do the study. The study's a lot more involved. That's why there was an additional time frame on doing the study.
Okay.
If
Hey,
I
Jim,
might, and I just add to that, please, Mr. Commissioner, if I might. Just that when you look at the language that was provided to us by the town engineer and the town planner after this issue became, you're right, it's a different issue. I've been doing this for a long time, as you have. Apparently, the issues or the concerns raised, according to your town engineer, with regard to upstream problems began around 2018. And it's probably because, as we learn now, at least on Friday, that whatever was done without review by your town engineering staff and without a plan being submitted. So why it left the wetlands agenda for violation, I guess we won't know, but we're here now, and we have to react. There wasn't, I think the reason that the language as being proposed by your staff says, okay, either do a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis and determine whether the existing culvert is sufficient. That might be a $30,000 waste of money because it's pretty obvious that there's issues, right? So it might be better, it might be more prudent to use those funds to make the repair, to put towards the repair. And that's why the option, the alternative in the language that's been provided to you by your staff was to go back, turn the clock back to 1973, to go back to when this was a plan that came before the Planning and Zoning Commission. There was an analysis done, there was a review, and those were the twin 60-inch culverts were what was proposed and installed. So this is really an effort, I think, on the town's part, recognizing, all due respect, that nothing happened for 5 years when it could have, or perhaps should have, but that this is a fair and reasonable resolution. Let's bring it back to where it was when there was no problem. And you're talking about a $250,000, $300,000 expense. This is not a small fix. I mean, and interestingly, as Jim Cassidy points out to me, that even when they made the repairs, there had to be, cranes and other pieces of equipment, and yet no one seemed to communicate to the town that there was work going on without a permit. But we recognize the problem. We're here to address it. And one of the other concerns is that, you've got to make a certain threshold determination when you approve an application, right, for this adaptive reuse, and that is that it fits. And one of the problems is doing all of this work, making all those repairs, and then perhaps a negative decision comes back from the commission. As a practical matter, had the use remained a nursing home, this issue would never have come up. So it was just an effort to try to resolve it with some degree of, with a great degree of concern for the municipal issue, but also recognizing that the owner has found themselves in a bad position that they didn't create.
That's what it is.
If I might just,
Go ahead.
I had some other comments. Looking at the plan should include, because it's a large parking area, a designated area for snow removal. We require that, and I don't see it on here. I also, can you confirm for me that there's appropriate dumpster and recycling containers? Again, I don't see it on here. And we've had, in the past, they've sometimes taken up some of the required parking. So there should be a dedicated area for that. Because it's such a long driveway, because the former use was a nursing home and the proposed use is converting to residential, there's no sidewalk. And I say that because it's in a residential area. So if the residents of the apartments want to take a walk out to the main road, they'd be walking on the roadway if I saw it correctly yesterday and looking at the plans. And I know it's your interconnection, so to speak, because sidewalks are meant to keep pedestrians away from vehicles. Am I missing it on the plan, or is there a proposal for a sidewalk along the long driveway?
There is an existing bituminous walk along the west or the east side of the driveway. So it runs, a little bit wide, but runs up this side of the driveway.
Okay.
It's
And
existing.
And I'm sure anyone in the audience will tell me, if you had it along, is there a sidewalk along the frontage? Because I did not
There's not
notice
along
it
the-
yesterday.
Not along the front.
Would it connect, if it was added, would it connect to any existing sidewalk? As you can tell, I like sidewalks.
No, I don't think there was
Okay.
any sidewalks out
All right. And then I think I know the answer. I'm going to go back to water. Is the building currently sprinklered?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the fire marshal's comments, if I could read them, I know they were acknowledged. The fire marshal's office wrote, construction approved based upon the following: construction documents including building plans, fire alarm system shop drawing, and fire sprinkler system shop drawing shall be submitted to a vetted independent plan reviewer prior to construction. So that last comment, so it is currently sprinklered, but you're saying that the system will change if you're converting it to the residential.
Yes. So after we get this approved, we go to final building plans. As part of that, we get the mechanicals, and there's a whole new fire sprinkler system that needs to meet current fire codes. So it would be upgraded to meet those current codes.
Okay. And then sticking with water, the water and sewer memorandum of May 31st says the existing building is currently served by a 10-inch cast iron pipe that combines domestic and fire services. If the existing fire line is not adequate to meet the needed fire flow, the cost to upgrade would be the responsibility of the owner. And again, because I'm thinking about the water and the change of use, I know you acknowledged in your response to us, yes. When would that be determined?
So similar to the fire suppression system, we need to have final building plans, which give us a fixture counts and what's actually required. There's presently a 10-inch main that comes into the property. That 10-inch main would remain in place, and then we're providing a new fire service off that main into the building and a separate domestic off that main into the building. We can't do a final design until we have final building plans. I've talked to Scott Shipman from Water and Sewer, and he said as long as we're in agreement with the conditions, that he was okay with it, we can deal with those post-approval, but he really can't design anything until I have final building plans.
In the water department, in the note number above, it says the applicant shall separate the domestic and fire services by installing a new domestic service to the building sized to meet the estimated demand.
Correct. So again, what happens is there's a 10-inch main into the property that remains. Right now, there's a single line that comes in that services both fire and domestic water. We provide a separate 2-inch line or whatever size is required off that main into the building. So it's going to be a separate domestic coming off that main into the building.
And the last comment is probably to the applicant's representative. So it's 71 market rate units.
That's correct.
No age restriction, no income restriction.
No, that would be a different application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Mr. Allenson, I believe you had some comments, questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions about the culvert, sorry. So in 72, the plan was for these 60-foot culverts, and then in 2018, they changed them to 18-foot or 36?
So the original plan was for two 60-inch, 5-foot diameter culverts, or corrugated metal culverts. Again, what happened is corrugated metal over time rots. There was a collapse in a portion of it. So what they do is put a liner or a sleeve in it, but obviously you can't fit a 5-foot pipe with a higher outside diameter into another 5-foot pipe. So you put a smaller diameter sleeve in it, and then you basically put very loose mortar, flowable fill, grout into the void. So one of the culverts was pretty clean. They were able to get a 50-inch outside diameter sleeve into it, and then fill it. The other pipe, the southerly pipe, had a collapse in it. So the fix was to put a smaller diameter pipe. They put a 36-inch diameter OD, so it works out to probably about a 30-inch inside diameter pipe. They put that sleeve in it and then filled the rest with flowable fill. So that's why there's such a reduction in that one culvert.
Okay, so I guess my concern is if we go back to the 60-inch, clear the 36-inch OD piece out, clear the whatever the obstruction is, and redo that to the 60 and make sure that the other 60 is still intact. Without a study, how do we know that that's sufficient?
That's what was, we're just putting it back to the original approved condition. Just by putting those 60s, that was what's there. That was what always was going on.
But we're basing that the reason for the change was the collapse.
Correct.
Okay. Moving on, will there be assigned parking for the tenants or the owners? Or is it going to be open parking?
Come to the microphone. Yeah, please.
Hi, Amy Alessi, owner representative. I do intend to have numerated parking for the residents specifically, since they are the tenants paying to live there. With the town regulations, there is nothing that says that there needs to be 1.75 per unit of parking spots, because just numbering that wouldn't make much sense, splitting 2/3 of a spot with another person. So we do intend to have numbered parking for residents, and then guest parking would complete the rest of the 134 spots versus the 70 units.
Okay. And then there was talk about removing, I've been on the property for the former business, and that turnaround that's up there was going to be removed and just translated to straight through, right?
Correct.
I didn't notice anywhere on the fire marshal's comments about the ability for vehicle access. When he did the inspection, was there any concern with turnaround by removing that? Because I know that turnaround was there specifically for emergency access.
He did not bring any concern up about turnaround. I've taken a look at that turnaround. I don't know if it was specifically there for a fire apparatus. It seems kind of small for fire apparatus. Maybe more for emergency vehicles such as ambulances can make that maneuver. But for a piece of fire apparatus, it would have to K-turn. Basically, pull up into the upper parking lot, back up, and then pull back out to the road. I don't think I know the turning maneuver for many fire trucks, and it'd be tough to go through that existing turnout area.
And just one last question. Like I said, I've been on the site before, and the grading of the parking, the existing grading is kind of funky. It dips a lot. Are you planning to have that regraded and repaved, or is it going to be the same kind of grading?
When you're saying the quality of the pavement? Or
I'm talking about the grading, how it...
We're following the existing grade. So it climbs from the lower level, and there's a grade up to the back or the south portion of the building to that, we'll call it the first floor level. So that grade would remain. And then again, on that far east side or right side of the property, there's a slope. We're going to be extending that back about 18 feet to provide additional parking. But otherwise, we have to follow that grade to meet the two-door entrances at either end of the building.
Right. If I remember it correctly, on that right-hand side of it, the spots kind of grade upwards a little bit, if I remember correct.
On the right-hand side, so...
By where that arborvitae...
over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's again, it's climbing up one story or one grade. So those parking spaces are remaining.
Okay. And at the same grade as to where they are?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think all of my questions pretty much were touched on. I just one question as far as with the various units. Are they going to be interdispersed, the one-bedroom, two-bedroom, studio, interdispersed amongst the building, or?
Throughout the building, yes. But the count was, I don't know if you're referring to the overall count, but it was 18 twos, 38 ones, and 15 studios for a total of 71 units.
No, I got that.
Yeah,
As
so
far as just
over
how they're going to be located
they're
in the building, that was
dispersed throughout the building.
good. Okay. Mr. Pagini, before I go out to the public, any final comments that you'd like to make? Any final questions?
Will the building have security controlled, like a pin pad or anything, or will it be just open?
Amy Alessi, yes, we do intend to have buzzers in order to buzz people that are tenants into the buildings, much like you would press and go through a call directory, and it'll call them to their cell phones in order to buzz them in or allow for packages and things like that to be delivered.
That's it? Mr. Pagidi? That covers everything you had?
Yep.
Okay,
So,
good.
if I can make one correction, my traffic engineer did inform me, I apologize, but there is sidewalk along the entire frontage of the site already, concrete sidewalk.
All right, excuse me? No, it would, sir, well, I thought the applicant had, you'll have a chance. I thought the applicant was going to make a comment.
Yeah, there is sidewalk going all the way down the driveway, and then the very front of the frontage to the right, which is all open. There is not a sidewalk connecting from.
Perhaps you could just go up to the map and just show us, if you would, please.
Yeah, so there's a bituminous sidewalk down the driveway, and then once we get to the road, to the frontage, there's a concrete sidewalk along the frontage from the driveway all the way to the east. It actually continues off to the east.
Good, okay. Thank you. Again, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public would like to comment, come forward, state your name and address. Before, let's just stop. Just let me have a show of hands of everyone that would like to comment. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to start on the right side here. And once we have everyone on the right side that's made their comments, we'll go to the center, then we'll go off to the left. So we'll start with the individual right there, if you would. Again, name and address.
Good evening. My name's Jeff Rupp. I'm not a resident of Wallingford anymore, but I have a business interest here, and I have a financial interest in the project. Amy and my son are the developers. But I want to make one point about the fact that we're here for just a change of use, not approvals of building plans, not approvals of the corrections on the culverts. In fact, I would ask Kevin to continue to read the conditions of that report or that agreement. What it says is that nothing can happen with occupancy on this property until those culverts are corrected to your satisfaction or to the town engineer's satisfaction. So I just want to make that point. This project is already 6 months in development. It'll be another 6 months before we can put a shovel in the ground. If we have to do the repairs to that pipe, that may extend it even further. If we don't know that this use is approved, you create a serious hardship. And all we're asking for is an approval for the change of use. All those other conditions, engineering, fire, building, all those things have to be addressed and will be addressed and will meet the requirements, or we won't get a CO. We won't get a completed project. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I believe, this gentleman here.
My name's Gary, Copus, 394 East, you asked for our address, right? 394 East Main Street, Wallingford, so I don't live near there. But what I do have is, I have a grandchild. I have two kids that are 30 years old that can't find good apartments. They're professionals, they're everywhere else they go in the country, Oklahoma, Texas, North Carolina, Florida, they find housing that meets the requirements of today's young professional. They don't find it here in Wallingford. So they're looking, when they come to work in Connecticut, they're looking for work in Stamford and Greenwich and in Hartford and in Avon, where they can find housing that is going to be similar to what they're trying to build here. We know Amy. We met her a couple years ago, but they walk by our house. They're really nice. They try to make all their properties look nice. They really want to do good from what we've met. But again, for us, we'd like our kids to be able to live and work in Wallingford and be comfortable in their jobs. Thank you.
Good enough. Thank you, sir. And then we'll go back. Yes, this gentleman.
Evening. Dennis and Karen Walcott, 15 Kondraki Lane. As a resident of Kondraki Lane for over 30 years, we hold a strong attachment to this neighborhood and its well-being. Therefore, we believe it is crucial to address the potential negative impact this project may have on our property values, as well as potentially altering the character of the neighborhood. Prospective buyers and homeowners alike may perceive that the presence of an apartment building as a negative factor leading to lower property values and potential loss in our investments. This concern is the utmost importance to many residents who have put considerable time, effort, and resources in maintaining and enhancing their properties. The number of units suggested in the development plan is excessively high for our neighborhood. Currently, there are around 50 residential homes on Kondraki Lane. If we add another 71 units to the total number of residential units on Kondraki Lane, would double that amount. Also, the increase in traffic and possible increase in noise can be highly disruptive, impacting the peace and tranquility we have come to appreciate in this area. Not only will these disturbances affect our quality of life, but they may also lead to safety hazards, particularly pedestrians and children who attend our schools daily. The sheer amount of traffic during morning and afternoon hours near the Stevens School renders the road nearly impassable. Preserving the integrity of our established neighborhood and protecting investments we have made in our homes should be a priority. Given these concerns, we kindly request Planning and Zoning to reconsider the current development plan and take into account the long-term effects in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can we... Please, you can come forward, but before you start speaking, again, let everyone speak. We don't need the applause and the clapping. Let's just try to keep it somewhat tame. Yes, name and address, please.
June Parker, 77 Kondraki Lane.
June, could you please come a little bit closer to the microphone?
June Parker, 77 Kondraki Lane. As a resident and homeowner on Kondraki Lane for my entire life, I have seen the street go from a quiet country road to a high-traffic street. Now, I am also the niece of the original owner that sold the property to be developed at 55 Kondraki Lane as a nursing home. And it was her wishes that that building would be used as elderly care facility. With that being said, I have the following concerns about the new proposal for the existing property. One is the 71 apartments going in, which will increase the traffic on our street. Right now, Kondraki Lane is a high trafficked street due to the 3 schools in the area, the commuters that have access to both I-91 south and northbound, all the surrounding neighborhood, and the Firehouse Road. The impact on our property value and the increase in our taxes. Again, you all talked about the water and sewer issues surrounding our properties, the wetland and open space preservation for surrounding properties, the safety for our schools, and the effects that it will have on the firehouse to the response for fires. And I wanted to know, well, we know now that the general contractor, but I wanted to know what kind of rating they have.
Excuse me?
The contractor who's doing it, what kind of rating they have, and they already answered what the market value apartments mean and who are their targeted renters.
Sure. Does the applicant know, as far as the proposed contractor, what their rating may be?
I'd have to defer to the owner's rep. I don't know what kind of rating contractors have, by the way. I'm not sure.
Well, we'll ask the owner's rep.
At this point, waiting.
Name and address again, I'm sorry.
Amy Alessi, 324 East Main Street, owner representative. At this point, because we don't have the reuse approval, we are working on building the project conceptually, and then we'll bid that out. But we would choose a contractor that we are familiar with and aware of. We have properties in the area, so we're familiar with this. And then the other question. You had 2 questions. I'm sorry. Oh, the target market, right? Yeah. So as we said, we are creating market rate apartments. with the target market being single-floor living as a preference. So all of these units are just one floor, and they range in square footage from, between 700 and 900 square feet, and then that depends on how many bedrooms there are. So this is really a nice neighborhood and a nice area, a nice piece of property for people that would be relevant to, if that is preferred by, senior residents or, younger families, working professionals, then that's who we will market the product to.
Good enough. Thank you. Okay, now, excuse me, we still have some, no, I'm sorry, you're done.
Okay.
There's a,
Yeah, just because I heard you.
no, let's wait for the next gentleman to ask a question.
Perfect.
Greg Whitehouse, 64 Kondraki Lane. I agree with the comments that have already been made, but I have a couple of specific things I'd like to ask about. I know from living there, the current way the parking lot is set up, when the fire trucks would come there, they would not be able to get in there and turn around, so they would wait in the street or the driveway. So I'm concerned that that gets addressed no matter what is done there, because you got to have access to fire trucks, especially if there's going to be 71 houses there. But I guess more importantly, Commissioner Allison brought up about how do we know that even the study that was done in '72 was adequate? And now I heard in the presentation that additional runoff was going to be coming off of the parking lot. So I just want to reiterate that question. It seems like it's a good possibility that another study needs to be done, because there's more runoff planned now than there was in the past. Okay. Those are my two concerns. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir. On the right side, anyone else on the right side would like to, so we have these two young ladies, and then we'll get to you.
Hi, my name is Jamie Frederick. I'm at 60 Sawmill Drive. I took a brief look at the site plans. Unfortunately, I didn't have a whole bunch of time to stop in during town hall hours.
Hey, could you just pull the microphone just a little bit closer, please?
Is that better?
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
All right. So when I stopped in, it looked like there was no erosion control plan. I did see that it was commented, I believe, in the town engineer's memo, so I'm not sure if that's been addressed, but I would encourage that the commission require that information prior to making a decision. Also, I didn't see anything in the file at the time about lighting. Again, I don't know if that's been submitted since I was able to stop in, I believe on midweek last week. The site currently, as it is pretty bright, even from where I am. So I would encourage the applicant and the commission to consider having the lighting compliant with the current regulations. And also being uphill of the property and on the side, near the side where they're going to be adding the additional parking, I'd just be interested in knowing if there's been any studies and if there's going to be any blasting required for the earthwork that's going to be required for the additional parking. And then also in regards to the drainage improvements, I know that was another recommendation by the town engineer. I believe the areas where the impervious is increasing is in areas where the stormwater directly discharges to the watercourse without any sort of improvements. So I know the applicant said they would be open to making improvements. Again, I think that would be important information for the commission to consider. And also the culverts, I think, has been a fresh area of concern for a lot of people tonight.
Good. Thank you. Before I get to the next member of the public, as far as the applicant, erosion control, or Mr. Pacini, erosion control?
I believe it was addressed. I don't know if she's saying specific areas. Maybe the applicant could.
Yeah, so we did receive a comment regarding erosion control in the latest set of plans you have submitted to you. We did incorporate erosion sediment control measures. It's important to note that the way the site graded, it all drains back towards the parking lot, not directly to the watercourse. So what we're proposing is on the southeast side of the project where we do have the cut slope. It's a cut slope down to the parking lot. We are proposing a sediment barrier along the toe of that slope once it's cut. In addition to, because everything drains toward the parking lot, we're proposing what we call catch basin impoundments. So it's basically a sack that goes into the catch basin to make sure no sediment gets into the basin and eventually onto the watercourse. So those were incorporated into the plan. They're in the response letter that you have submitted back to you. There was a comment about lighting. At this point, we're proposing to leave the existing site lighting that's on the site. We can, if I talk to the applicant, we could consider maybe replacing those fixtures with new light fixtures that would be dark sky compliant, full cutoff fixtures. But all the existing light poles that are on the site are proposed to remain, so there's no additional site lighting being proposed on this site.
And the last one was blasting.
So we only have a very minor bit of cutting along the southeast corner. We have not done any borings in that area, but based on looking at the grade, I'm not seeing any ledge outcrop or any indication there'd be any blasting. If you were out at the site, you will notice along the back site there was a very significant cut, and in that whole cut there's no signs of rock at all. For the amount of grading we need to do to create those 18 parking spaces on that one side, blasting would not be a practical option if we had to, which I highly doubt. That area would probably be either ripped or hoe rammed just to remove whatever minor ledge, if there was any in that area. But I highly do not anticipate seeing ledge in that area.
Okay, thank you. And again, I think, yes, and I believe it'll be the last one on this side. Is there anyone else on the right side who would like to speak?
Thank you. Dawn Trafficante Lindauer, 3 Sylvan Way, which is right across the street from this proposed repurposed use. I have a couple questions, although I do agree with all of the concerns. I have a few questions to ask. I'd like to know, is it you're renting out each unit, so you'll own the entire building and then you rent? Okay, so it's not a co-op kind of thing where people are buying the units. I did hear mention about a traffic study of only 3 additional more trips, depending on what time of day it is. But what about traffic deliveries for 71 units, for Amazon, for UPS? I mean, it's not just people going in and out. There's a lot more that goes on in traffic than just personal vehicles. I also want to know, my children went to Stevens School, they went to Dag Hammarskjöld, and they also went to Lyman Hall. I haven't heard any concerns brought to this attention about the impact to these schools. I'd like to know if anybody's thought about it, anybody's concerned about it, what's being addressed for the traffic and the enrollment for the school. As everyone has stated, it's a very busy street. That means more kids, more walking on that street. And I'm concerned about all of their safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the center now.
Hi, Denise Sukowski, 91 Kondraki Lane. Jeez. The first thing is this gentleman, I'm not sure exactly what his name is in the blue suit, was saying how it would be 71 units, and for the single units it would be 1.6 for parking, and the double would be, the 2-bedroom would be 2.5, and it would be exactly 134 parking spots. How do you get 134 parking spots exactly with no visitors? That was not stated what he said. He specifically said 134 parking spots. That eliminates any visitors, eliminates any Amazon, FedEx, whatever. That's, I'm sorry, that just doesn't add up for me. And you also have people in a 2-bedroom apartment. There may be 3, 4 drivers. I currently live with 3 kids, and I have a driver and my husband. There's 3 right there. Soon, in 4 months, there'll be 5 drivers. And I, again, don't know this gentleman in the center who said he has his traffic toolbox. His toolbox did not come and actually sit there and watch the traffic. I am a mother. I have walked to Dag. I have walked to Stevens. Thank God my kids can walk to Lyman Hall. But we are all walkers on that street. There is no bus that comes and gets any one of our children because we are in walking distance. So to say that it's going to be 3, possibly 15 more cars, when you had the convalescent home, you have one nurse per 10 patients. So you have 18 nurses that probably work 7 to 3. You have one manager, a supervisor on, and then you have four nurses, one supervisor, 18 aides. So if you have that and you add in 134 more cars, I'm really sure that's not adding up to 3 more cars of traffic, even 15 cars of traffic. If you do a study, you will see that at 7 o'clock when the high school starts until 9:15 when Stevens gets all their students in, it is a raceway. 91 just keeps coming and they forget they're on Kondraki Lane because I'm the second house and it's a speed zone. And then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 10 of 2, when the high schoolers get out of school until about, the elementary is 3:40, but by the time the parents leave, because it's a wonderful place to be, you go to the playground, we're looking at 4 o'clock. And then you have all the people that come home from work. So again, I'm really sorry about what your toolbox does, but it is not anywhere near 3 to 15 more cars.
Thank you. Again, would the traffic engineer or
So
or the
I'll start
gentleman,
on the
or the
parking
gentleman in the blue suit.
So I'll start with the parking. There was a comment that we are providing 1.6 spaces per dwelling unit. Just for clarification, we are, per the town of Wallingford zoning regulations, we're providing 1.75 for one-bedroom and studio units, 2.25 for the two-bedroom units. What I'll say is that I've worked in several municipalities throughout Connecticut on multifamily developments. The standard rate in all the other municipalities is usually 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit, whether it's 1 or 2. I think the town of Wallingford has had the foresight to require a higher number to deal with visitor spaces. Thinking of a one-bedroom unit, usually you have one person living in that unit, maybe 2. So that gives you that 1.75. In the two-bedroom, obviously, it's either two-bedroom or an office space, so you have that 2.5. So you have an additional buffer built into your requirements to allow for that overflow, those visitors that a lot of municipalities don't have, and I compliment the town of Wallingford for having the foresight and having those numbers that are more appropriate for the multifamily use that we're proposing here. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he can answer the traffic-related questions.
Thanks, Jim. Just to clarify, again, for the record, Matt Baldino, licensed professional engineer. To clarify, the proposed development will generate 28 new trips during the weekday AM. The comparison to 3 trips was based on the previous approval, which generated 25 trips. The traffic pattern between the two will actually shift. With a nursing home, you typically have arrivals in the morning, whereas with an apartment building, you typically have more departures in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we have more people coming home, whereas the nursing home, you had more staff leaving. So the traffic pattern will shift from the morning being primarily exit vehicles, and the afternoon will be primarily entering vehicles, which was a change in pattern from the previous development. But overall, the change in trips associated with the development would be negligible. This is performed based on industry standard data collected at multiple locations where they establish a rate based on the number of units. As traffic engineers, we have this entire copy of all of the studies that have been prepared previously and count cars at each of the driveways based on the units and then establish that rate. So again, this has been completed with all of your standard traffic engineering methodology.
And if you could please just explain the peak hour. When you're talking about the peak hour, when does that peak hour occur?
Correct. The weekday AM peak hour is 1 hour that occurs somewhere between 7 and 9 p.m., or 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., and that is measured in 15-minute increments. It could be 7:15 to 8:15, but it would be 1 whole hour throughout that period. Then in the PM, that occurs 1 hour between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to other people. We'll give you a chance to come back, but we're not going to keep going back and forth with the dialogue. Other members of the public would like to speak? Yes, individual in the behind.
Okay, I'll be pretty short and sweet. So Pam Cambarelli, 7 Sylvan Way, and it's actually Sylvan Way, not Lane. So my concern...
If you could please pull it a little bit closer to
Sure.
we see our light flashing here.
Sylvan Way, it's not Sylvan Lane. And my concern is Sylvan Way is directly across the street from the entranceway to this potential complex. There's about 15 houses on Sylvan Way. It's a very small, narrow road that's predominantly of kids and people walking with their pets throughout the day. Our street is going to be nothing but a cut through. When you're going to go any place, if you're not going to go to 91 or you're not going to go to the left, you go straight ahead to get to the center of town, and it's going to be a cut through. And the street itself is not equipped to have any additional cars coming through. So if this does go through, I would ask that it not be a cut through, which people are not going to follow, let's be serious, and that there be some kind of speed bumps to put in to protect the people of the area.
Good. Thank you. Other members in the center? Yes, this gentleman here.
My name is Scott Jenkins at 13 Sylvan Way. My one question is my house is right looking directly to the property in question, and there is some grass in that area. It's like maybe 50 or 60 yards of grass. Is that going to be developed, or is that going to stay grass?
Gentleman would like to answer that question, please?
That area will remain as it is. It's a grass lawn. It will remain as a grass lawn.
Okay. Is there going to be any trees or anything by that sidewalk, or if you do put a sidewalk on that side?
Sir, as far as trees?
We're not adding any trees to the front of the property. We're adding trees on the parking area and then a buffer back on the site along the westerly boundary line.
Okay. So all of that grass is going to stay grass?
That's correct. That's what the gentleman said.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Other members in the center that would like to comment? I guess not. Yes. Do we have any other members of the public in the center that would like to comment? Okay. Yes, please.
Liz Jenkins, 13 Sylvan Way. I also am very concerned about traffic going up and down Sylvan Way. I mean, it was bad enough when the nursing home was there, people parking in front of the house, littering. You know, we had quite a bit of through traffic. People, use it to cut through. They go up Sylvan Lane, hang left, that little stretch of Sunnydale to cut through to Long Hill Road. Our street's not equipped for, 71 units potentially also headed that way. And I would like to see some measure to prohibit that. I feel, if you don't have business on my road, you don't need to be there. You're not there to visit me or my neighbors. You're not UPS, FedEx, Amazon making a delivery. You're not there to deliver oil. You don't need to be on that road. I would like to see some measure for that. And yes, a speed bump would be fantastic. I would love it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe this lady on the end.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Johnson. I'm representing the owner of 421 Long Hill Road. And to address the traffic engineer, I would like for him to actually see the traffic through that area between the hours of 7 and 9 every morning. High school people, whether it's staff, teachers, or students, they start going to school at 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, school's probably ending this week. This obviously timing is not great for this kind of a recommendation, but then we have a middle school. Middle school they start bringing the kids in the buses at 7:30 or so, as well as the staff and teachers being there. And then the elementary school starts at around 9, so then you have like from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock with all kinds of traffic and buses and the parents parking on the street to drop off the kids or pick them up in the afternoon or whatever. So I know you have averages from your industry that that you use as tools. I understand that, but these people know this neighborhood and they know what kind of traffic is going through here, and I think you have to witness it and live it to have a better appreciation of what we're all saying about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Other members of the public in the center.
Hi, Norma Savarino, 26 Meller Road. I live up the hill from Brocalo. My main concern is who are you marketing this complex to, and we have not yet gotten an answer. I studied some of the visuals, and there's no indication of the square footage, like actual square footage, what it's going to cost per month, who you're marketing it to. Is it business people? Is it college kids? Is it seniors? Are there stoves with a high voltage line going into every single one of those apartments? Because there's no indication anywhere. Or are they going to be using the commune, like the kitchen facilities in the nursing home, as their restaurant facility, similar to a hotel that they do up in Meriden? I want to know that, I want to know, there's no indication of utilities on those plans that I have seen. So that's where my concern is big time. I also, up on Meller Road, just up the hill, have seen bear and fox and bobcats. Last week there was a fox with a rabbit in its mouth. We have excessive rabbits. If you're going to disturb the wildlife down along the river, where are they going to go? They're going to come back up into our neighborhood? Big time, I'm a mom. I did all that walking. My kids were all walkers. I agree with the mother that talked about we didn't have buses picking up the kids. They do now up in my area, but we all walked. And that place is an absolute nightmare over there. I would suggest highly that you sit there in the afternoon and try to get through Stevens School without hitting somebody or a kid, the excessive traffic. And the other thing is no one's addressing if Lyman Hall is being consolidated with Sheehan. I don't know what the final plans are. You're talking about another massive amount of kids in crazy cars driving around over there, and then you have another 71, we're talking 200 people, potentially how many cars in excess of that area. A lot of concerns. I don't think you should go forward with it. Find another alternative for the plan.
Good enough, thank you. Again, if the applicant's representative would like to just comment on some of the questions this lady had.
Amy Alessi, owner representative. I just want to clarify who we are marketing the units to. We are not in the business of discriminating against anybody that wants to rent the facilities. So if families find that the two-bedroom is an adequate living situation for them, or if a single person would like a two-bedroom, or if senior residents would like a one-bedroom to downsize, I don't think that is something that is my decision to make as the property owner and the lessor. They will all have their own kitchens and ovens. We do not intend to make this dormitory style or university living style. These are going to be full apartments outfitted for each individual use. I think those are the two.
If you could just go over the size too.
Oh,
I
sure.
think that was mentioned a little earlier, but if you could just again reiterate
I think
that.
it's, I worked with the architect to design these really smart and use the existing window placements as boundaries for the apartments. So they each vary in sizes. Some studios are around 600 square feet. Some two bedrooms are upwards of nearly 1,000 square feet. So it really depends on the placement of the building. You saw that it's a unique H shape, so they all aren't necessarily stackable to be cookie cutter for each. So it's really customized to what the building as it exists and it's currently built can handle, and what would be a smart way so that bedrooms have windows, living rooms have windows, and everyone has, barriers between units.
Good enough, thank you. Other members of the public?
Hi, Julie Good, 37 Kendracky Lane. I have a big problem with the traffic. The 180 units that live there, they had no cars.
They didn't drive. There was no traffic on Kondraki from them. It was just the caretakers, probably 35 a day coming in and out. With 71 units with 134 parking spaces, really? That is 134, or at least 130 more, 100 more than we have. I have traffic in front of my house. My mailbox has been smashed and gone because of the schools. How can we afford to have 100 more people coming in and out, besides what everyone else said with the FedEx and Amazon? This is really ridiculous. You have to live there to see.
Thank you. Anyone else in the center? Sure. Hopefully you have an answer.
Yes, Mike Nishti, 8 Sylvan Way, and what I was wondering is, you said you have no discrimination on who comes into these apartments, so Section 8 people are going to be allowed to come in there?
I don't believe that's an appropriate question, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, really?
We've indicated that, I don't know if there's anything wrong with affordable housing, but that is not the plan. These are market rate. But, you know, I think what she's indicating, the representative, was you don't discriminate. And this plan is not brought under your affordable housing section, which it could have been, and then it would be appropriately discussed. But I think we've made it clear this is market rate. These units are 700, 800, 900 square feet in size. That would be fairly unusual for affordable.
Thank you. And again, I believe you have a question.
Lorraine Good, 45 Meller Road. I did learn tonight that all of these units are going to be owned by one person, and they'll be handling all the rentals of that. And that is a concern for me, because I was just wondering if you're going to limit how many you will be getting assistance for from the state, because the state is a great resource for those who are struggling financially. And are you going to limit how many of those that you'll be getting? I would have loved to have seen a plan where you actually sold the individual units. I think that that would have been a better resource for that area, because when you own something, you have heart and you have effort into the place that you live. And rentals, I could see that the concern not only for traffic and population is also the fact that you lose control. So those are my concerns. And, you know, if you want another recommendation, it was Genesis, but what a great resource it would be if you decided to refurbish it and house veterans instead.
Thank you. Are there any, yes, sir.
William Lennon, 65 Kondraki Lane. I literally am upstream of the culverts.
Sir, if you could come just a little bit closer to the microphone.
You got it.
Thank you.
I looked down the backside of my property, across the stream, and up right at the proposed development. First off, at night, the lights coming off that building it's just light pollution. They've gotten, within the last year, I believe, year and a half, they put these high-intensity spotlights to reflect off the front of the building that's parallel with Kondraki. And I'm just hoping that there'll be a row of non-deciduous trees, because in the winter we do lose all the leaves, and you can just see where they put the white trailer to the left of the building. So you see the Winnebago construction vehicle that they parked a couple months ago, and they started emptying out stuff and throwing it in dumpsters, where I only know that there's like 2 dumpsters kind of right across from where I live to empty out the nursing home. When it rains, especially in the winter when the ground's frozen, I have seen water back up and submerge quite a lot of tree. Their trunks go underwater, and it's days before this stuff eventually will percolate out and then migrate down back into the stream bed. So if this culvert underneath the road was designed in '71 for 180 people and some staff, and it was made out of like galvanized steel, 5 feet in diameter, 2 of them, what are you going to upgrade to? Is it going to be Galvy so it rots out again, or is it going to be like concrete and done to kind of help remediate the flooding that I see during heavy downpour rains, which Connecticut doesn't get a lot of rain, but when it gets it, it seems to get buckets. So that's part of my concern. The light pollution at night, the culverts back. I never knew why. I always thought a beaver went to work, but I've just never seen kind of flooding like that. And although there's no buildings down there, this does impact trees and I'm sure animal habitat. But part of what I wonder is because it'll be less ambulances, I hope. It was always just a lot of ambulance traffic, but if you're going to have people and apartments, I was a volunteer fireman for 15 years, you're going to see a lot more responses with fire trucks. And you really do want to turn around for an attack engine. And I don't know what Wallingford hauls for water. Most attack engines are 5,000 gallons, but literally at 1,000 gallons a minute, that's 5 minutes of firefighting. So with the increased population there, cooking and being active, are the pyro lines to feed fire hydrants adequate to sustain a firefight in a large building that's 2-story with people? I just throw that out there as a concern. And then I really do ask that the dumpsters get set way in the back so I don't have to listen to them get dumped first thing in the morning. It's just a petty grievance of mine. But I also wonder if they're going to do cut and fill on the one side of their building that I'm going to look directly at. Are they going to put swales and berms to direct the runoff? And I guess everything goes back into the parking lot and they're going to contain that and filter it. But every piece of property always has stuff that just goes right down the embankment into the stream. And that's just part of what I want to raise an awareness for. I know the world needs housing, but I also don't, in my neighborhood, want to see something built that hasn't been thoroughly vetted and thought out to prevent future problems from occurring. So thank you for listening.
Good, thank you, sir. I guess I'll go to the applicant for, excuse me, we're going to have, yes, we just have the applicant just address some of these questions first so we don't kind of lose track of what they are. As far as, I guess, let's go to the cut and fill. Is there, I know you explained some of that earlier, but if you perhaps like to reiterate on that.
So the only area we really have any cutting going on is at the southeast corner of the property, so the right-hand side of the page. It's graded in a manner where when we put those parking spaces, they pitch back to the parking lot. They don't, there's no swales, there's no grades that direct any water directly to the water course. It goes back towards the drainage system, back towards the existing paved area. So it eventually gets in to the drainage system. So that's why we're putting erosion sediment controls at the toe of that slope, and then also impoundments at.
Sir, if you could just speak up a little bit more.
Impoundments at the catch basins. So for grading, again, everything goes back towards the sites. Nothing's directed towards the water course. There was a comment on lighting and being so bright. And talking to the owner, it's my understanding a few years back when the building went vacant, there was some security lighting put up on the building for protection. They are willing to update the lighting to be more current with standards, so dark sky compliant, and take off the temporary lighting that was put on the structure. So they are more than willing to update lights to prevent shedding of light onto adjoining properties. Again, it's been brought up about the culvert. You heard this gentleman's situation where he sees flooding of the water course, so he's upstream of the culvert. So going to the smaller diameter culverts, I'm sure that going to smaller diameter, it did back up water. So that's the temporary inundation he sees. As we go through this process of either replacing the culvert or doing the hydraulic analysis, one thing I assure you that is I'm going to take a look at impacts upstream and downstream. I'm not 100% positive that opening the culverts putting a bigger culvert in is the right solution. Every action has the equal opposite reaction. That if we open them up, does it cause an impact? And before it goes under my license, I'm going to take a look downstream too and see what the potential impacts are. So I'm not 100% positive of the fix yet, but I will be looking at both upstream and downstream impacts before we come up with a plan for the replacement of those culverts. There was also a question about the fire lines. As I brought it up before, we can't design a fire suppression system until they have a building plan. We are going to be upgrading the whole fire system to current fire standards. That is a requirement of the building permit. The old system was put in 1973, so I'm sure it's outdated. It will meet current standards and be appropriately designed.
Thank you. And again,
I'm Representative Mary Mashinsky. I live at 188 South Cherry Street in Wallingford. I'm here mainly because a couple constituents said to me when the nursing home was closed abruptly, why don't we turn that into more housing? And I thought that was actually a good idea rather than letting it sit there vacant. And for background, Wallingford needs 1,066 units of affordable housing right now, and the state needs 86,000 units of affordable housing. And by that, we mean spend just 30% of your income on housing. That's considered affordable. Ideally, it would be located near the train station and bus route. This is not near the train station or the bus route, so that's one negative on this site. But we are short of housing units. I'm in the manufacturing caucus, and Paul Lavoie, who is the chief manufacturing officer for the state of Connecticut and grew up in Wallingford, he's a Wallingford person, he briefed us and he said that our number one economic problem in the state is the shortage of workers, especially for advanced manufacturing. And the main obstacle to filling this workforce is we don't have enough housing for them. And there are a couple of other secondary problems, not enough child care and the transportation problem. But the number one issue is not enough housing for these workers. And so they are tempted to go to another state where they can get a cheaper house. So we do need more housing to serve young workers, to help grandparents who want to downsize, have a less expensive unit, and help young professionals get started in our town. I have some senior constituents who are trying to get into a less expensive place. They've been on the Wallingford Housing Authority waiting list for 4 years, and they're still on the waiting list. We have a shortage of senior housing as well. So if this developer, I heard him say, is talking market rate, but if at least some of the units in this proposal could be affordable, it would help the town meet its housing goals. It would help the state keep young workers here to work on advanced manufacturing and support the industries that we have here in Wallingford. It also could be used to help Wallingford seniors remain in their town, which they love. And then on this particular application, just listening to the comments here, as many sidewalks as you can put in would be very helpful because there's so many schools very close by to this site. And you will be swapping, the applicant will be swapping out vegetation for more pavement, which always means that the stormwater controls have to be serviced on a regular basis so they keep the water clean into the future. In my other job, I work on water protection, and sometimes an applicant in another town has not serviced their stormwater controls, and then 10 years later they're not functioning. So I just wanted to make sure the commission requires that into the future of the applicant. So those are my comments, and hopefully the application will down the road include some affordable units, which would really help the town out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who would like to comment? Yes, sir. And if I don't see anyone else, this will be our last individual from the public.
My name is Samuel Rose, former resident at 324 East Main Street, representing Zach and Amy Ropp.
Just again, a little bit closer if you to the mic.
Samuel Rose, 324 East Main Street, representing Zach and Amy Ropp. I just wanted to add a comment that I just hear a lot of concerns from the residents regarding the traffic and the noise. But what I hear is that these are all a group of assumptions, and we're assuming that everyone that's going to be living in there is going to be making a lot of noise or is not going to be a proper driver. Also about the delivery trucks coming in, we're assuming every single person is going to be getting one truck per person coming in, when in fact, like delivery services usually put an address on their route and just make one stop and one delivery. This could be up to 3 trucks, you know, including FedEx, USPS, and UPS, so I don't think that should be a concern, that there's a lot of delivery trucks coming and going. And also, I think Noah mentioned that nowadays we have a lot more people that work from home, so that doesn't mean that they necessarily come and go multiple times a day. A lot of these residents could be parking their cars there and not moving it for weeks. So again, my comment out there is that there's a lot of, I would say, uneducated assumptions going on about...
Let's just, come on, everybody was listen to what other people said. Give this gentleman the opportunity and don't interrupt him, please. Thank you.
So that's, you know, again, just my opinion. It's not a fact. But I would just like to add that Amy and Zach Rupp are also residents of Wallingford. They're not outside investors coming into Wallingford and trying to change anything. So any change that they want to make in Wallingford is going to be directly affecting them, as those routes are routes that they frequent daily. So if there is any added traffic, that's going to be affecting them. And again, in my opinion, none of these concerns are actually factual. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Okay, we're not going to kind of go back and forth here, but you'll be our last speaker.
Kathleen Johnson, representing 421 Long Hill Road. Amy and Zach don't live in this neighborhood.
Address your comments to the commission.
Amy and Zach do not live in this neighborhood, so they don't have the same vested interest in the traffic and the flooding and everything that all these people do.
Thank you. All right, at this point in time, I don't see any members of the public like to comment. I will bring it back to first to the applicant. I know there was several questions, comments made by the public. I think a lot of those were addressed. There may be other things that you'd like to comment
on. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, yeah, you did a nice job, I thought, in terms of, you know, getting answers to the questions as the public came to the microphone. It does make it easier than going through some copious notes. I will say that one of the things that this commission may want to hear is from the planner. I know that he's had a conversation with the town engineer vis-a-vis traffic and our traffic memorandum. I know that Matt represented that he has spoken with the town engineer about the traffic memorandum, and that she had a couple of comments but was basically fine with it. But we are the applicant, and perhaps you'd like to hear. I know that Mr. Pagini's had conversations with the town engineer. I had asked for at least a one-sentence memo from her indicating that she had read the memorandum and that it was, you know, properly prepared, was done procedurally correctly. I suspect all that's accurate, but rather than hearing it from me, Mr. Chairman, perhaps you want to hear it from the planner. In terms of lighting and noise and things of that sort, of course, you know, as Mr. Cassidy's pointed out, you know, whatever needs to be done in order to make sure there's not spill off of lighting onto neighboring properties is important. I think, you know, when I looked at the application, when the client came to me, I looked at it and I thought, I checked your regulations. I was interested to find that, you know, the adaptive reuse for multifamily is in this zone. It's in all your residential zones. I mean, this sounds like the perfect white elephant to otherwise convert to that use. That's what the adaptive reuse is all about. If you want a potential negative impact on property values, let this stay, you know, empty and degrade. I mean, so I think in terms of the reason that this P&Z created in I think it was 92, this new adaptive reuse section, was the recognition that over time in all communities, certainly Wallingford included, there are buildings that need new uses, that they become empty, and rather than seeing them degrade and have a negative impact on a community, the fact that this will be, I don't know if you, I mean, the renderings are attractive. This can be an attractive development provide the housing that the state rep has talked about, and I think those are all important factors. But I don't know whether Jim has any specifics to go through on. I think he answered most of the questions, Mr. Chairman, that were posed during the course of discussions. You know, one of the neighbors did indicate that there was traffic concerns that she had when the nursing home was open. I mean, this is an area with a large building with either 180, rooms with all the aides and nurses and other staff, and I suspect that that created a pretty significant amount of traffic. Again, the 71 units, the majority of which are either one bedroom or studio, may suggest that you have the professionals who can work out of their office, rather at their home office, rather than spending time. I know that happens. I have a son-in-law who now works at home. So things have changed over time, but I did want to have at least Mr. Pagini talk about his discussions with your town engineer about whether or not the planning memorandum that you've received was accurate as to its results and its process of preparation.
Sure. Mr. Pacini, would you like to comment?
She did not express any issues with the traffic memorandum. I believe it was done per ITE and engineering standards, so she did not express anything to dispute that.
Thank you. And I think that's it, Mr. Chairman. Listen, Jim, do you have anything you want to add?
I'll go back to the commission. Any comments that commission members would like to make? Any additional questions for the applicant? Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listened to all the comments, and again, I always appreciate hearing from the residents. The developer, the owner, got up and said, he's just asking for a change of use, which in effect is yes, if we move forward and approve this, but it's more than that. It does have traffic implications. It's got lighting, erosion issues, and a myriad of other things. It's not just a change of use. For me to move forward with this, we really have the issue of the culvert. This apparently has been causing issues for a number of years. And my first question, actually, through you again, Mr. Chairman, to the town planner, is did this application go through inland wetlands?
No, it did not, but she was consulted during the process. She went out to the site actually prior to the submission of the application, I believe. But, she didn't notice the culverts either because it was presented on the site plan as one way, even though it wasn't incorrect necessarily, but the town engineer did say unless it was brought to our attention, it probably wouldn't have been noticed. So she does a very thorough job, but she doesn't see, every little detail, I think, sometimes. So, but she did go out there. She did inspect the site. You can verify that with the applicant and the attorney, Senaviva.
So, thank you for that answer. So, being a former member myself of inland wetlands, in my opinion, because this does impact a stream, that this should have come before Inland Wetlands Commission to take a look, not just the environmental planner, but the entire commission itself to weigh in on a number of things. The culvert itself, the flooding in the past, some of the potential erosion control issues which would affect the stream, storm water management, which again affects the stream. So I don't know if we can, backdate, having the inland wetlands. I think the only thing that would happen here would be to, have this application either, revoked or I guess we could deny it. But I do have a real strong opinion that, this should have been looked at by that commission. Now, that being said, again, for me to move forward, we have to now take a look at resolving this and really becoming Inland Wetlands Commission. So, I'd really, for me to move forward, we need to get something together to, really wrap our hands around the culvert, the wetlands impact, the stormwater management, and, have that presented to us.
So the actual culvert, when it does come to the construction, would have to have a wetlands application. But the environmental planner did have discussions with myself, and she did not agree that it should be wrapped into this application necessarily because of the prior issues in the culvert. But she did want this attached to this approval, so before the occupancy would come in, that she can, have that application in front of her specifically for the culvert. Because she did have discussions with the applicant quite a bit regarding the wetlands issues. And so I believe it was decided upon that it did not have to go to wetlands.
And again, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, based on my experience as a former member of that commission, this is something that, that she almost did that in a administrative approval type situation. And if that had come before me, like we get the letters, for asking for administrative approval, I would not have allowed this to, be decided, without the full impact of the commission. So again, I don't know how we resolve it. Before we move, and I've said this 4 times now, right? Before I want to move forward myself, I want to wrap our hands, this commission, whatever it takes around, figuring out a plan for that culvert, how it impacts the wetlands, how it, the stormwater management is going to be handled. And I think there's that major issue we need to resolve. Traffic's a concern, but I think quite honestly that's been explained fairly well. But again, the culvert for me is an issue right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would certainly agree with Commissioner Cohen. As I expressed nearly an hour ago, more than an hour ago, the culvert issue is not a new issue, and even the comments just recently from the town planner, this site has a history. I'd like to know the history. I'd like to know the status of the culvert. I know if indeed there was ever a wetlands violation that was resolved or whatever. Normally, the Wetlands Commission and the environmental planner gives us very detailed memo. Water's a big issue, and I was flipping through the papers here. We got a very brief handwritten memo from the environmental planner, which just says, project engineer will inspect a drainage pipe and fall at rear of building that goes into the river for any required maintenance. P&Z can make that a condition of approval. No. I'd like more than this from the town environmental planner. I would not be prepared to vote on this without additional information, specifically from the environmental planner, addressing Commissioner Cohen's comments regarding wetlands, why it was not applied to them, Was there any violations at this particular site? I am very concerned after 3 dozen speakers from the public about the standing water in the area. I'm very familiar with the area. I've got friends who live over there, are in the audience. You don't have to talk to me about the traffic. I get it. I too live near a school, and I see it. And my dad was a former principal of an elementary school. Everybody drives their kids, and if they're not driving, they're walking. So it just, the increase. But I would like more information on the culvert. I would also like something from the town engineer in writing, commenting on the traffic. I understand the information presented by the applicant, but again, some of the comments raised by the public are nursing home staff versus residents, and working from home and delivery trucks. I hate to say, I get it. I get it all. I see the traffic, you know, and they said during the pandemic, traffic had gone down because more people were working from home, but the reality is the people working from home were replaced by the delivery trucks. So, you know, it is worth getting some additional information. I'm not in a hurry. I know some of the material here is dated in March, and we're at the June meeting, but this is a decent-sized application at this time. I'd like some additional information, and I think we deserve it.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Other commission members? Mr. Allenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to also talk about water, but in a different aspect. I mentioned fire before and that turnaround that's being removed. When I was looking at the measurements of the drive and everything, it looks like there's a hydrant that's being relocated. Again, there's no comments from the fire department about where that hydrant's being relocated, where it should be relocated. I have concerns. Like I said, I've driven the existing parking lot, and it's been tight in a car. So I have concerns about emergency vehicles getting in and around. You mentioned K-turns before. I'd like our fire department and our emergency personnel to weigh in on their ability to access. If there's 71 units, 130 spaces, that's at least 130 people in that building, if not more. So I'd like to have that at least addressed by the town. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Parent.
Just a couple of things, because I was in favor of the application. All right. We have a change of use application, right? That's what we're doing, adaptive reuse.
Adaptive reuse, yes.
That's what he's asking for tonight. All these other, why inland wetlands, when they had the opportunity to have a hearing, have a meeting and everything like that, why they didn't do that, I don't know. But the point is that, and there are issues that have to be worked out, okay, but I feel that it's not fair or equitable, just any way you want to put it, to hold up a change of use application because inland wetlands did not raise the issue before tonight, or didn't raise the issue at all.
Yep. Okay, I understand what you're saying.
And to echo a further comment, to echo Mr. Senavega, what's the alternative? Turn it down. And then deal with a building that doesn't have any other use and will continue to deteriorate and be a problem for the town. So I really think that we can move forward with that application. I think we can all vote for it in good conscience. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. I guess as far as my comments, Mr. Parent, as far as you're questioning or commenting that it wasn't looked at by the wetlands, inland wetlands, that or there shouldn't have been at least maybe more discussion with our environmental planner, because that didn't occur doesn't mean that it shouldn't have occurred. So I think I would come back to that. As far as what options do we have, approve it or turn it down? I think we've heard comments from other commission members that they're looking for some additional information on really on three items or three different categories. We're talking about having something a little bit more definitive from our fire marshal concerning fire hydrant, concerning the access for emergency vehicles, fire equipment. I think people are looking for that. There's, as Mr. Fitzsimmons pointed out, he would like to have something a bit more from, or more, from our town engineer concerning, the traffic. We've heard, the comments from the applicant. We've heard Mr. Pagini give kind of an overview from our town engineer concerning traffic. But I think commission members would like to see more information on that, more detail. And, the same thing, I think Mr. Cohen's comments concerning the culvert and other issues that may relate to that, I think that that's a fair question. It seems to some degree with the, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Piccini, but I believe you mentioned when you were reviewing the application, as far as the culvert, it's not that it was overlooked, but it's something that came up near the end of the review process. Is that fair to say, as far as what
Yep.
the issue may or may not be there?
And wetlands was not excluded by any means.
Well, I understand.
She was involved throughout the entire process.
Yeah, no, I understand. But again, I think that there's more definitive information. And again, maybe one or two other commission members would, like to reiterate what they would like from the, from the applicant and from our, environmental planner concerning that and some of the issues that, may be there or may not be there. So I don't think anybody at this point in time are saying, we either have to do this or we have to do that tonight. I think commission members are saying we'd like to see some, more information from the applicant as well as from, from our various, various staff. From my perspective, looking at this, certainly I agree with many of the comments that were made by Ms. Mashinsky as far as having a need for, additional housing in this town. I think that that's, that's certainly something that we need. We need that. It could be, you folks aren't, certainly providing affordable housing, and I'm not suggesting that you do, but certainly apartments are a lot less expensive than, a single-family residence. So, providing options to, to potential members of the community and potential members of the community. So in that regard, I think that the adaptive reuse is very appropriate, but there's issues that need to be looked at or additional information that needs to come. Does that, I guess I'd ask the commission members, that pretty much sum things up?
Yes.
I don't know if that, do you have some questions as far as what the directive may or may not be?
I'll read the minutes, I guess, and usually it's what I try to follow when we come back for the next meeting. I just wanted, I'm not sure this is the appropriate time, but perhaps, public hearing's still open. The issue with the culvert, and we're going to spend a lot more time on it, I'm sure. But again, I just wanted to give you a little bit of the background of the discussions. I mean, when the issue came up on Friday, having done this for quite some time, I thought, wow, gee, we got 24 hours. But to be fair, the town staff was really very gracious of their time and their efforts. And one of the things that I and my client were able to glean is the fact that, this issue is an old issue. It's not one that got resolved appropriately either by the then owner or, with all due respect, the town. It comes in under this cease and correct order that the owner at that point suggested. They're the ones who came to wetlands and they said, we've got this collapsed driveway. And this is what we think ought to be done so that we can have an emergency meeting. And, you've got those sections in the wetlands regulations where you can have emergency meetings. And there was an engineer who was there talking about what sort of things were happening out at the site and what sort of contemplated fixes there might be. And the problem was that this went on for several months, And I think, just trying to recreate the history of 2018, the owner at that point, Quinnipiac Valley Center, I think it was called at the time, at least according to the wetlands information. It was on the agenda for June, July, they have no August meeting, September, October, November, and December of 2018. It was in November of 2018 that the environmental planner told the Wetlands Commission that work had been done, so that the driveway was back in operation. There had been these two liners, if you will, that Jim Cassidy's been talking about, installed. And that was, to be fair, without town review and approval. And as you look forward over the next 5 years, it's pretty evident that when you take two 5-foot culverts and reduce them to 40 inches and 36 inches, you're just about having the size, and it does make it, certainly it's more problematic. There's not an issue there. But for whatever reasons, it all of a sudden just disappeared starting in January of 2019 from the wetlands agenda. And again, this is not throwing arrows. It's just a practical history for you. So when we fast forward and the applicant's saying, as I did on Friday, wow, this is not something that, that could have been addressed 5 years ago, it wasn't. So there was an effort to try to come up with a suggestion, and that's where that particular comment came from, that met all those considerations, recognizing that at least the town engineer, and again, she can speak for herself, there apparently were no records that she could find of concerns prior to 2018. So that obviously when you had, that may be something for this commission to determine, but the fact that you had existing culverts that had been properly engineered and operational for 40 years, since 1973, they were working. And so it seems that as one of the alternatives that was suggested, go back, bring the clock back and go back to those two 5-foot culverts, and it seemed to make some sense because it brought you back to a time when there weren't complaints. And the issue also is, as far as my client is concerned, we're concerned about the fact that, you do the study, and the study is not a simple study, nor should it be, but it's not a simple study, so it's a comprehensive study when you do these kind of hydraulic analyses, and you're talking about, not that it necessarily matters to the commission, but a $25,000 or $30,000 price tag, probably 4 to 6 weeks, and Jim can speak to that better than I can. I read them, I don't write them. And then once that determination is made, then you go into step 2, which is to decide what kind of fix. What does the town engineer and environmental planner and the applicant's engineer think is the appropriate fix for that? And so in an effort to provide some, I don't know if the word's relief, but some process, this suggestion came forward, and this was as of today. And so I know that Kevin, your planner rather, was kind enough to share it with me. We reviewed it with my client. We thought it was appropriate. And again, we're going to bring back as much information as we possibly can. We do want to give you a comfort level. You gentlemen have always been, do a good job for the town. I have great respect for you, so we're going to certainly respond to the questions and issues you raise. But I just wanted to give you sort of the thumbnail of how we got here. It's not, as you've pointed out, it's not the applicant's fault, but we just happen to be in the crosshairs at this point.
Sure, I think we certainly appreciate the thumbnail, but I think we'd like to see the long version.
I got you.
With that, yes, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Senaviva, appreciate the comments, and I think, again, based on your last comment there, that it just came up. I think it does warrant further discussion. But one question I'd like to ask, again, you went very quickly over the site plan here. What's, and maybe you mentioned it, I didn't pick up on it, but what is going to be the total impervious surface on the site? Do you have that number?
Today, it's 93,069 square feet. Proposed is going to be 96,462. So it's an increase of about 3,600 square feet.
You said 96.
Today, as it stands today. is
96,000,
It's
not
93,069.
Okay.
Proposed
See,
is 90, so it's an increase of 3,600.
right. So I'm trying to remember back to my, inland wetlands.
So you mentioned about regulated, going for a permit. So we had gone over all of the regulated thresholds.
Yes.
As required per the town's wetlands regulations. First, obviously, is any activity within 50 foot of a wetlands watercourse. We do not have any activities within 50 feet of a wetlands or watercourse on the site. Your next criteria is new developments, anything over 25,000 square feet of impervious coverage, or redevelopments that add more than 10,000 square feet of impervious coverage. So we didn't meet that threshold. You also have a threshold where you take a look at the average slopes. If you're greater than 50%, measuring it at a distance of 20 feet from the watercourse, it adds an additional 50 feet to the regulated activity. We do not meet that threshold, so the regulated area from the wetlands is still 50 feet. So we went over it with the environmental planner. There were no thresholds met that initially required a permit.
So you did discuss the 9,300, just under the 10,000.
The increase, 3,600.
Right, yeah.
3,600 was an increase.
36.
You need to be over 10,000
Right.
of additional impervious coverage for a redevelopment that triggers a wetlands permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohan. I guess at this point in time, I think you folks have a fairly good idea, and hopefully more than a fairly good idea, as far as what the commission would like to see come the next meeting.
Very good, thank you.
Good. So at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to our next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue special permit 408-23 to our July meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Gentlemen, we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to jump down to our item number 4 on the agenda, old business, site plan, self-storage units, 950 North Main Street, Wallingford LLC, 86 Barnes Road. If the applicant's representative would please come forward to begin preparing for the presentation. And Mr. Allenson, if you please note all correspondence for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a memorandum from our Department of Engineering to the Planning and Zoning Commission dated June 9th, 2023. Site utility plan dated February 10th, 2023. And I believe that is it.
Thank you, Mr. Allenson. And if the applicant would please introduce himself, begin his presentation.
Can do. Hi, my name is Zach Georgina. I'm a project engineer with Giuliano Associates located at 405 Main Street, Wallingford, Connecticut. Hoping this presentation is a little bit shorter. So what we got here today is 86 Barnes Road. You guys may know this is the property behind the movie theater. It is currently a vacant lot. Occasionally we've got field brush growing up in it. Represents about 3 acres. It has been tilled, used for stockpiles, used to have a building, and has been vacant for several years. We're looking to change that today. Well, in the future, not today. We're not going to build it instantaneously. All right. So what we are proposing here is 5 self-storage buildings on this site. As we did say, presently it is vacant. It's fairly flat. We're looking to keep the area along North Main Street Extension is going to end up being in cut, and we are going to move that material over towards the movie theater along Barnes Road for fill. Presently, the site has... Nobody left. If I can stand over here, it'd be a little bit easier. Presently, the site is supposed to have access from Barnes Road. It has 0 curb cuts, so we're proposing one of those. We want to come right in here, dead center on the property, entering in, where you'll be lined up dead straight with one of the access aisles for the storage facilities. per the fire department's comments, there's concerns about turning radiuses. So these two first buildings are going to have grass pavers in front of them. Those are essentially a grass area with a soil reinforcement to allow fire trucks to drive over them while still providing a little bit of green space. Easily mowed, nice and easy to maintain. As we come around the facility, the largest building on site will be this 8,000 square foot building. All of these structures are no more than 14 feet in height, but this 8,000 building right here, moving up to two 5,100 foot buildings, and then moving up we've got a 5,400 square foot building, and then lastly our second largest building at 7,000 square feet up near the movie theater. This entire facility will be fenced in. We are looking to keep everything in here nice and safe. We're going to go on to parking next, because parking is important. According to the town regulations, we should have 25 spaces, which for a self-storage unit, that's a little bit much. So we went to the traffic ITE, and there are two approaches to figuring out your traffic. One of them suggested that we have 3 spaces. That seems a little light. The other one recommended 7 spaces, and those are looking at the per unit versus square foot of the facilities. As such, we are proposing 8 spaces, one of which by code has to be an van ADA space. So we are looking to put 6 of our spaces here, number 7, and the 8th being that ADA space required right there. Going to move on here to, while I'm here, nice and easy. Snow storage is proposed along the front of the building, along Barnes Road. We want to keep that away from the wetlands to allow snow to melt, be treated by and infiltrated by the grass, and essentially try and perk into the ground itself. I know you guys aren't wetlands, but we are looking to collect all of the stormwater on site and infiltrate it. We'll go into that in a second. Skipping S&E for a second. There we go. All right. Stormwater. Okay. So utility.
Could be, Zach?
Yep.
If you ever wanted a second career, you'd be a great game show host.
My mother wanted me to be a lawyer, but alas, I went engineering. So what we are looking to do here is utility-wise, we only need electricity on this site and stormwater. Because these units are not going to have sprinkler systems, they are small units, we are going to be providing remote there will be fire protection in terms of remote Siamese on site and fire hydrants. So we are good to wait a minute. I don't want to lie to you guys. I'm sorry. We did remove the remote Siamese because fire department was fine with the fire hydrant out front. So we have fire hydrant out front.
Slow down.
I'm just trying to get to the end because it's late. I know I'm tired. You guys are tired. All right. But we are having electrical come in, one major conduit from the existing pole out front, splitting up to feed all of the buildings with required electricity for lighting. Stormwater, as I said, we are going to be infiltrating, and we are proposing a giant facility for that. Essentially, we are directing all stormwater from the building by roof leaders to sheet flow into the parking, where all of these catch basins located throughout the facility are slightly depressed, so water will be directed to them. All that being collected, directed over here to this giant facility right here, which is 4 by 4 by 8 concrete galleys. Roughly, how many did we end up with? It was 112 chambers worth. Sounds like a lot. It is. Due to code, we are required to use a maximum infiltration rate of 5 inches an hour. Our test results here said we have close to 17 inches an hour. So the system's 38% over-designed. It will not overtop. We do, however, just in some weird apocalyptic scenario, if we get that giant 500-year storm, we do have an overflow to this catch basin. Do I think it will do much? Probably not, because at that point there's a lot of water, but we do have that as a outlet for this system, should that ever happen. In terms of water treatment, we are proposing a Vort Sentry unit. These essentially are a straight shot unit where you have the unit itself, a trough along the top. As water comes in, it filters off to a certain volume. That would be our 1-year storms, how they're sized. And that allows that to filter out any trash and sediment. Everything else bypasses by into the system. So small storms, beginning of storms, you're going to get that treatment. Once you get to infiltration volumes, it goes right past into the system for easy infiltration. All right. Check my notes. We did parking. I'm sure at this point you guys have noticed that we are in an RF40 zone, and we seem to have not enough landscaping. Don't you worry, though, because we already went and got ourselves a variance for reduction for landscaping within that front yard setback. Because this is a corner lot, we do have both the North Main Street and Barnes Road front yard setbacks. As such, we are utilizing that space for the parking spaces we mentioned earlier. All right, let's see here. We've got buildings, setbacks, trees. All right, trees. I'm just going to jump back to S&E real quick because I believe our trees are located on there. So, presently there are two fairly large trees here. We're looking to try and keep those alive. There's obviously, they are very sizable, so not sure where the root system has grown, but the goal is to try and keep those alive. But to add to what we currently have here, we are planting 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 trees along the perimeter, 50-foot spacing, and I know it's not a frontage, but we are going to include those along the cinema. We are looking to maintain the current wooded brush area along North Main Street Extension and the wetlands and woods along the side of the property that abuts the current existing self-storage unit also owned by our applicant. I know that we discussed sidewalks earlier, so I don't want to forget those. We do have sidewalks connecting to the existing sidewalk here, wrapping around the entire perimeter of the property and connecting up to the cinema. I believe that's pretty much the gist here. S&E controls, we are proposing silt fence along the property perimeter with a focus on double row silt fence along the major wetlands and the water course there because we want to protect those. Okay. Questions, comments?
Good. Thank you for the very thorough and entertaining presentation. Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy you're going to try and save that gorgeous, gorgeous large oak tree.
So is Bill Austin.
So I hope that when you construct those units, you do take care of the root system and do everything you can to save that tree. I drive by there all the time, and I always look at that tree. It's gorgeous in the fall. It's just gorgeous all the time. Really, the one question I have is, what's your fence going to look like?
I believe it's currently proposed as a chain link fence, which would be similar to the one on Paretta's current property to the north. So allowing for high visibility in terms of a police presence if there was to be an issue or general policing of the neighborhood while maintaining security.
Okay, I think to the north there, they kind of have, I think it is chain link, but I think it's kind of it's a different type of fencing on the outside, kind of.
I believe the sides have those vertical slats in them for privacy. I'm not from the area, so unfortunately I'm not super familiar. I just was told that they are going to be consistent with that. So if
okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Other commission members. Mr. Allenson.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I noticed some additional documents that may not have been read in. I'm just not sure. If you don't mind me just reading them in real quick.
Nope,
for the record.
absolutely. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. There's correspondence from Zachary Georgina to Planning and Zoning Commission dated May 5th, 2023. Inspection report from the Wallingford Fire Department. Date of inspection, February 17th, 2023. Interdepartmental referral from our environmental planner. Date of submission, February 10th, 2023. Additional inspection report from the fire marshal, dated March 3rd, 2023. Memorandum from the Department of Engineering to Aaron O'Hare, environmental planner, and Kevin Pagini, town planner, dated April 3rd, 2023. Correspondence from Giuliano Associates to Inland and Wetlands Commission dated April 28th, 2023. Stormwater drainage report, revised date April 28th, 2023. Stormwater maintenance plan on Giuliano Associates letterhead dated March 29th, 2023. And a property and topography survey dated February 10th, 2023. Apologies again, Mr. Chairman.
Apology accepted. Anyone else? Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Cohen. I give you a lot of credit for looking to save that, or at least attempt to save the tree. I suspect someone else might have come in and cut it down before they put their plans together. So I think that's certainly best efforts to keep the tree would be great. Although, as Mr. Fitzsimmons said, those routes are probably into North Haven.
True. Typically,
Not that you don't need to explain.
I was just going to say, typically our office does try to maintain as many existing trees as possible. It's always cheaper to save a tree than it is to remove and replant.
Mr. Pagini, any questions?
No further questions.
Okay. Any members of the public like to comment on the application? Seeing none, bring it back to the bring it back to the commission. If there's no final comments or questions from the commission, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a site plan for self-storage, 86 Barnes Road, application 209-23. Site plan approval request for a self-storage facility located at 86 Barnes Roads on plans entitled Layout Plan Proposed Self-Storage Facility dated 2/10/2023 and revised to 6/8/2023, subject to the following conditions of approval. Number one, comments from the Fire Marshal's Office dated 2/28/2023 and 3/3/2023. Number two, interoffice memorandum from Aaron O'Hare, environmental planner, dated 3/3/2023 and 6/9/2023. Number three, comments from Allison Kapuscinski, town engineer, dated 4/3/2023 and 6/9/2023. And number four, an erosion and sediment control bond in the amount of $10,500. And number five, 6 copies of the approved final plans forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Office.
Thank you. We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
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 And yes, the application's been approved. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic evening as well.
Thank you. Brings us up to our next item number 4, old business. It's a site plan, 780 square foot accessory apartment for Jay Champa at 422 South Elm Street. Is the applicant please come forward to begin preparing from the presentation, if the applicant is here? And Mr. Allen, should you please note all correspondence for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have the application for a site plan accessory apartment, along with photographs. And a proposed diagram for the construction. Additionally, we have an interdepartmental referral from our environmental planner dated March 14th, 2023. We have comments from acting fire marshal dated receipt March 16th, 2023. Interdepartmental referral from Scott Shipman, senior engineer, water and sewer, received March 29th, 2023. Interdepartmental referral from our town engineer, dated March 27th, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. If the gentleman would just please introduce himself and give us just a brief overview on your application.
Say again, can't hear you. What do you say?
If you would please introduce yourself and your name and address and a very brief overview of the application, if you would please.
My name is Jose Chapa Batista, 422 South Elm Street. And I am here for, to get approved for get legal department, my property downstairs. That's what I am here, to hear you, what you guys say. Last time I was talking with him about.
So it's an accessory apartment and you're looking for approval of your accessory apartment. Correct, sir?
Yeah.
Good, okay. Mr. Pagini, any comments on the application?
No, I just want to thank Mr. Chapa for showing up tonight. And yeah, it was reviewed by Water and Sewer, and they kind of corrected any issues that were going on out there. So it'll just be contingent upon those comments and just final inspection by our CEO.
Okay. Any commission members with any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a site plan for CHAPA 422 South Elm Street, application 207-23. Site plan request for a 780 square foot accessory apartment located at 455 South Elm Street, subject to the following conditions of approval. Number one, comments in interoffice memorandum from senior engineer Scott Shipman to the Planning and Zoning Department dated 3/29/2023. And number two, final inspection to be approved by the zoning enforcement officer.
We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, your application's been approved, sir. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
That was a tough act to follow.
All right, we'll come up to now our item number 3, which is a public hearing for zoning text amendments. Mr. Allenson, would you please read the legal notice and then note all the correspondence for the record?
I feel like Zach would do a better job at this. Legal notice number 902-23, zoning text amendments to a number of different sections which include replacing the word mentally retarded with intellectually disabled throughout and changing DEP to DEEP throughout. Deletion of certain terms in sections 2.2, 5.2F, 4.2.B.4, 4.6.B.10, 4.9.B.9, 4.1.C.1, 4.1.C.9, 4.4a.C.2, 4.4b.C.2, 4.5.C.1, 4.11.B.14, 4.16.B.1.a, 4.22.C.1, 6.9.D.1.a, deleting section 4.17 and 6.11, trip generation table, deleting certain sections of nonconforming uses, buildings, and lots, which includes sections 6.13.A.4, 6.13.A.5, 6.13.B.3, 6.13.F, 6.13.H, 6.13.I, revisions to town center and IHZ overlay zone, minimum parking requirements, sections 4.26.15.B, 4.23.D.2, 4.26.F, and revisions to special permit notification requirements, sections 7.5.D.1.A, 7.5.D.1.B, 7.5.D.1.C. Proposed new sections 6.36 accessibility improvements and 6.37 outdoor dining hours. Addition of proposed new Article 10 reasonable accommodations, current Articles 10 and 11 to be renumbered. A memorandum outlining these changes is available in the Planning Department office or per request.
That was impressive, actually.
Was that 7.3?
If anyone would like that repeated, I'm going home. Memorandum from Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Undated, but it's titled Ray Outdated State Definitions and Outdated Terminology Workshop Changes.
I know it's dated May 9th. It's on there.
Dated May 9th, I'm being told. Sorry about that. Correspondence, email correspondence from Stephanie Camp, South Central Regional Council of Governments. Date of receipt, May 24th, 2023. Correspondence from J.H. Torrance Downs, Deputy Director of Lower Connecticut River Valley Council of Governments. 2, Mr. Jim Seichter, Chairman, Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission, dated May 30th, 2023. Email correspondence from the Lauren Rizzo, Administrative Services Coordinator at the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments, date of receipt June 1st, 2023. And draft of Article 10, reasonable accommodations, dated March 24th, 2023.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Allenson. And I guess the way I would like to handle this, Mr. Pagini, if we could start with the memorandum of the May 9th memorandum, 2023, and go through the each item. And after we discuss each item, then I think, unless commission members have a different approach, then to vote on each proposed text amendment individually. I think that's perhaps a better way to keep things organized. So if we could start out with, change outdated terminology, 4.1.B2, and move down the list.
Sure. So much of these first ones are just to update old language that's in our regulations just to reflect state statute language. The outdated terminology is in 4.1B2, and that would be changing mentally retarded to intellectually disabled, is now referred to by the state statutes, and any other section where it may appear. I didn't find it in any other section, but this kind of just changes it in case. Deletion of section 4.17 neighborhood.
No, let's, again, what I want to do is just, we'll discuss and see if any commission members have any questions on, again, we'll start with the first one, 4.1.B.2, and then if none, then I'd entertain a motion for that particular amendment, and then we'll just go down the list again.
Okay.
Okay. Again, I'll start out as far as on 4.1.B.2. Any commission members with any comments on that? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve that.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve a change the outdated terminology in 4.1B2 and other pertinent sections from mentally retarded to intellectually disabled because the language is outdated and has been updated in section 8.3F of the Connecticut State Statutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes. Moving on to section section 4.17, Neighborhood Business District.
So the section is technically in our zoning regulations, but it appears nowhere on the zoning map. So unless there is a reason why that is that I'm unaware of, I believe it would just be best to delete it since it serves no purpose.
Good. Again, commission members, any questions on that? Comments? Seeing none, again, I'd entertain a motion on deletion of section 4.17.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve the deletion of section 4.17 Neighborhood Business District because there are currently no areas in the Wallingford zoning map where this district exists.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes, that's been approved. Moving on to section 5.2.F.
So that is to delete Railroad Avenue in section 5.2F, and that's industrial roads, not industrial feeder roads. That was just a minor typo because there's no such road in the town as Railroad Avenue.
Okay. Again, same thing, commission members. Seeing no comments, Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Sorry.
Yep.
Not to disappoint, didn't let it get too far. Railroad Avenue, are we sure that's not a paper road?
I was informed by many departments that it does not exist. So unless it's somewhere that I'm unaware of, but I believe it was brought to my attention by engineering. But if you want to keep it, I don't really care.
I know we have had some paper roads in the past, but if engineering is not aware of it, then...
I mean, there kind of is no harm in keeping it, but people just mention it all the time that it doesn't exist, so.
Well, I think if our engineering department's confident it doesn't exist, it
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
Okay.
So with that, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve the deletion of Railroad Avenue in section 4.52F, industrial roads, because there is no such road in the town of Wallingford has Railroad Avenue.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes. Moving on.
So this one's pretty simple, change in reference from DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, to now what it is known as DEEP, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, throughout the entirety of the zoning regulations because the agency name has been changed.
And I take it no one has any objection to that. Again, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve a change for any reference from DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, to DEEP, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, throughout the zoning book because the agency name has been changed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes. Moving on. Removal of all items related to the regulation of forestry. If you could
So-
explain that also a little bit. Now, I was confused when I read that.
I was notified by the state, at just a random phone call one day, that we are not in compliance with the Connecticut Forestry Practices Act. So that's Chapter 451A, Section 23-65K of the Connecticut State Statutes. Basically, we never did something back in the 90s that allowed us to regulate forestry through the zoning regulations. So we were notified that we cannot regulate anything to do with forestry at the municipal level, according to DEEP. And I did look up the statute, and it was correct.
So we can't regulate for any, we're not
Correct.
compliant with
Oh.
the state practices, so we can't regulate forestry?
Apparently, back in the mid-90s, you had to, as a municipality, apply to be able to regulate forestry at a municipal level. Apparently, the town never did. So he said he had to do a phone call to every town in the entire state that never complied with this statute and, have them remove the regulation of forestry in their local regulations. Wetlands also got the same notice.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know this is before your time, but any reason why the town, in any research that you might have done, why we are not in compliance or why we didn't comply?
I don't know. Maybe there's only I think he said there's 10 to 12 towns that actually do. So that leaves about 154-ish that don't. So it's not a huge issue. It's just the fact that we're not allowed to regulate it at a municipal level. It's all done through DEEP, any forestry.
All right, any commission members with questions on this or comments? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve removal of all terms related to the regulation of forestry, which specifically include removal of forestry in the farm definition under section 2.2 and removal of forestry in 4.2.b.4, 4.6b.10, and 4.9b9 because the town is not in compliance with the Connecticut Forest Practices Act, Chapter 451A, Section 23 through 65K.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes. Moving on.
So I think this one was brought up before by the town engineer during from former applications, the trip generation table that's currently in 611 because it is severely outdated as far as ITE standards go. I believe the last workshop, we're looking to at least replace that table at some point, but the town engineer did recommend removing that table.
Questions, comments from commission members? I think we had discussed this at a workshop. At this point, I'd entertain a motion on the application to delete.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend the commission approve deletion of the outdated trip generation table in section 6.11 in the Wallingford zoning regulations because it is no longer current.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And moving on, removal of philanthropic.
So this was a suggestion that I found from memos from Janice, and it's been requested specifically from the law department to remove philanthropic, as she has specifically stated many times, it is not a land use.
Questions from commission members? I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve removal of philanthropic from all sections in the Wallingford zoning regulations where it is described as a use, sections 4.1C.1, 4.1C.9, 4.4A C.2, 4.4B C.2, 4.5C.1, 4.11.B.14, B.16.B.1A, 4.22.C1, 6.9, and D.1.A, because philanthropic is not a land use.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, voting beginning with Mr. Parent.
Yes.
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 And yes. Moving on.
So this one's a bit lengthier. I don't know if you want to save this, discuss it. This is about deletion of section of parts 6.13, the nonconforming uses, building and lots, specifically as noted in the memorandum. So that would currently be number 6.13A, 4 and 5. This specifically is requested to be removed with consultation with the law department because they do not comply with the state statute regarding abandonment. And I believe 5 is also repetitive with 2. And also, let's see. And then also the F, H, and I are also not in compliance, as well as B3. So basically, because there's that new, the newer state statute that deals with the abandonment and time limits, the law department took in consultation with them, we looked at, what was allowed, what wasn't allowed, and, she didn't think these sections, that we can legally enforce these sections of our zoning regulations.
So again, this was all reviewed by the law department in
Correct.
consultation with you, and these are her
Yes.
recommendations.
Yep.
Okay. Any commission members with any questions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on this amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve deletion of parts of section 6.13, non-conforming uses, buildings and lots, 6.13A.4, and 5, B.3, F, H, and I, because these sections do not currently comply with the Connecticut State Statute, specifically 8-2D, 4A.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes. Moving on. Parking requirements.
So I is a changing of parking requirements for residential developments in the downtown development corridor subdistrict. This is for specifically the town center district, and this was agreed upon at the workshop on March 29th, and that was to change it to no minimum requirement just for specifically that subdistrict.
So this is for the downtown developments corridor.
This is for the downtown development corridor subdistrict in the town
Yep.
center district.
Yep. Okay. Commission members, I know this was something that we discussed at one of our workshops, not the most recent one, the one prior to that. I think we had quite a bit of discussion on that, and it was my general opinion that everyone was in agreement with that, but if there's other comments, questions people would like to make. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on this amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve making a change to the parking requirements for residential developments in the DDC Downtown Development Corridor Subdistrict to no minimum requirement in section 4.26.15.b because it clarifies the intent of the zoning regulations.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes. And moving on to J.
This is the same thing, but for the incentive housing overlay zone. So no minimum requirements in the downtown development corridor sub-district. That's defined in the map on appendices of our zoning regulations.
And again, I think this just goes back to my comments earlier on the prior one as far as we had discussion on this. I believe we had also input from the general public on this also. And I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve a change to the parking requirements for residential development in the DDC, the Downtown Development Corridor Subdistrict in Incentive Housing Overlay Zone to no minimum requirement in section 4.23.d.2 because it clarifies Wallingford zoning regulations intent.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes. And moving on.
And then this is the overall change to the overall town center. So the entirety of the town center district, residential minimum parking requirement to 1.5 spaces for any 2 bedrooms or greater in the table in 4.26F.
And again, questions by commission members? If none, entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve a change to the overall town center district residential minimum parking requirements to 1.5 parking spaces for any unit, 2 bedrooms or greater in table 4.26.f because it would clarify our intent related to minimum parking requirements.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Cohan. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes. Moving on.
So this one is the adoption of the section 6.36. That's the accessibility improvements section that's located in the back of the memo. And then adoption of the new Article X reasonable accommodations. That's attached also to the memo as well. And that then Article of validity would become Article 11 and, oh wait, no, amendments would become Article 11 and validity would become Article 12.
Any questions? Commission members? Yes, Mr. Cohan.
Yes. On this one, I do have a comment. This past Thursday, we had the Regional Planning Commission, and we went over and basically approved the text amendments as not causing any municipal aspects. However, one of the premier land use attorneys pointed out that on the appeal section, that appeals of a decision by a town planner, zoning enforcement officer may be filed with the Planning and Zoning Commission within 30 days of written decision. According to state statutes, that appeal has to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
I think, didn't she mention that at the workshop? I think she had discussed it. I don't remember. Because I did not write this.
Right. We had quite a bit of discussion. The state statutes does say it's got to go to Zoning Board of Appeals. We could leave this in here.
Yep.
But it's not what the state statute says.
Okay, I could speak to the law department.
Yeah, perhaps we can hold off on this particular amendment and ask for clarification from our corporate counsel. I think that would be the best thing to do.
I know she said she did, or she was hoping.
No, I understand that, but again, Mr. Cohen indicated that,
Yeah.
and again, not to, look at what one attorney says, the other attorney says, but, apparently it was something that was raised, through the Council of Governments, whatever.
Yeah.
And I just think from being, again, I don't think anybody's questioning our corporate counsel, but there was an issue that was raised, and I think it would be a benefit to just ask for that to be looked at one other time. I don't think that really hurts anything.
Okay.
Yeah, just additionally, usually, they do send a letter saying, our decision, and they may mention it in the letter. I'm not sure. If you haven't received it, the meeting was Thursday, so it will be coming.
Okay. No, I did not see that. I did see a small blurb about the from the regional planning agency. I did not see that specific comment though. Maybe it'll come in the mail. Okay, we could hold off on that one. What about the section 6.36?
Section 3.
That's the accessibility modifications. Is that seemingly okay to adopt that at least?
My
Right.
thing was Article X.
Go through that again, Mr. Fagini, please. I'm looking.
So the section 6.36 is a separate section from the reasonable accommodations, Article X. I know if we can just make a motion to adopt that separately from the reasonable accommodations. They're sort of tied together, but not necessarily so.
How do commission members feel about that?
Indifferent.
Indifferent? So someone would like to make an indifferent motive?
Yeah, I guess because it goes with the other one, I figured we just hold the two. Because it's not.
Why don't we do that?
It kind of goes, you just don't have to apply for anything for the accessibility modifications, so it's just giving exemptions in the zoning regs. For
Yeah, why don't we do that together?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll hold off on both of those. Continue.
The last one.
Moving on.
Do we have to make a motion to continue that specific one, or no? I don't think so.
Since,
Yeah, perhaps we should. It's a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we continue to a future meeting the adoption of section 6.36 so we can have further review.
Second.
We have a second, all in, voting by Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
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 And yes. Okay, moving on.
So this is changes to special permit notification language in sections 7.5, D1, A, B, and C. This is discussion that came about on some previous applications. As you'll see in the memorandum,
Excuse me.
we're looking to...
I do have a question of you. Do I have to be, if I'm here, can you pass this motion? If I'm not here?
If you're not here, that'll leave us with four commission members.
Okay.
So unless the applicant would like to have 5 commission members present, I think we can go with 4. So I think we're good with 4.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Oh, not a
See you
problem.
Very much.
Ready for a motion? Ready for a motion?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve changes to the special permit notification language in sections 7.5D.1A, B, and C has referenced in a memorandum to the Planning and Zoning Commission dated May 9th, 2023, because it clarifies and cleans up the intent of our notification language.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes. Moving on.
So the final one is the adoption of the new section 6.37, outdoor dining shall be allowed until 12 a.m.
Any discussion on that? I know I did get something, not directly from a corporate counsel, but in a conversation. She said, what are you guys, nuts? She had suggested, instead of going to midnight, perhaps 11 o'clock. So that's certainly up to commission members. If we would like it at 11, or again, we had discussed this and we said 12. So I would just open that up for, if there's any further consideration for this.
I can agree to 11.
11's fine with me.
We'll go with 11.
I'm still stuck on 12. And you can tell her I said so.
So at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Commission approve and the adoption of Section 6.37, outdoor dining, shall be allowed until 11 p.m. because it clarifies the intent of Wallingford zoning regulations.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes. Okay. And also, I just want to just note for the record, you know, these were all public hearings. I didn't go out to the public to ask for comments simply because there's no members of the public here.
Scan the room.
That's true.
And if you would just close out our agenda, please, Mr. Pagini.
Bond releases and reductions, that one is fine to be released.
Do I have a motion to release the bond as recommended by Mr. Pagini?
Mr. Chairman, I move we reduce the bond as recommended by the town planner for the erosion control bond being held at 60 South Elm Street in Wallingford.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on.
So that's the review of the 6-year capital and non-recurring budget. I believe I sent out an email just asking for any comments or concerns, and I think I only received one that was responded to by the Public Works Director.
Anyone with any comments, questions? And again, I'd entertain a, I guess it's a motion on this.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission, after review and consideration, approve the Town of Wallingford 6-year capital budget for fiscal years 23 through 29 as submitted by the Office of the Mayor.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes. Moving on, administrative approvals.
Any questions on administrative approvals?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I hope not to delay the meeting too much, but I almost requested that C be on the agenda, site plan revision, Matt Brown, 654 North Colony. That's the car wash because, we got your notification that the state had changed the direction from Route 5, and I was just trying to understand how they, came up with, what they proposed. I guess there's two questions. Apparently the plan went to the state at some point, and then they changed, the entrance. And I just wondered, why.
I thought it was an explanation was sent detailing that as part of the administrative approval, so I don't know off the top of my head exactly what the reasoning was from the DOT, but I know it was concerning some sort of either access or some utilities issues that they found on site. But again, I can certainly.
Yeah,
find that.
you're right. It did have an explanation, but I didn't understand it. It was how the turning radius or something into the parking area. So yeah, maybe if you could, I don't know, send me an email or something. We don't have to belabor it here.
Yeah, no, I could take a look at it.
Yeah, it was just, I just, like I said, I almost put it on the agenda, but didn't want to spend too much time. Okay.
I did run it by the town engineer
Yeah,
first to see
yeah.
her impression, and she did. She didn't think they were major changes, but she definitely wanted
No,
to have them
right.
reviewed. So
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yep. ZBA meeting. Anything from that meeting?
Anybody with ZBA?
And anything for the ZBA meeting for next week?
I don't believe so. So at this point in time, I believe we've come to the end of our agenda. If there's no further comments from any commission members, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn our June 12th meeting.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're adjourned. Have a good evening.